Welcome to the Planning Board meeting for the town of East Fishkill. It's August 9th, 2022. Will everyone please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Upcoming meeting dates. We have a special meeting set for August 22nd, 2022, and following meeting dates will occur in September and October, September 13th, 2022, and October 11th, 2022. We have minutes for the June and July meetings. I think everyone was here with the exception of Lori in June. Can I have a motion to approve the June minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. And may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July 12th meeting?
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. First item on the agenda is Tom's subdivision. We will start, I need a motion to declare lead agency.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good evening, Mr. Gillespie.
Good evening. Yeah, we went ahead and circulated for lead agency. Obviously now the board is lead agency. We were before the planning board, I believe, last month. There were a couple of modifications that we were looking at, which included also adding an easement on that flag portion of lot number 3 in the back to allow for future maintenance of the barn for the person that owns on lot 2. So we've highlighted that on here. The driveways have been staked in order to allow the highway superintendent and the town engineer to go out there and take a look, but we're in good shape there relative to site distance and so forth. So what we're looking for tonight, if there's, barring any other comments or concerns, is to move forward with a hearing at this time.
Okay. Questions or comments by our professionals or board members regarding the project?
I stopped out, and I think the site distance is adequate, but again, this highway superintendent will have to sign off on it, but it seemed to be okay. And I think at the last meeting, it was brought up about the very slight setback to the existing barn and whether there was enough room for future maintenance. I don't know if that's been addressed. That was brought up at the last meeting.
Right, so we obtained a variance from the zoning board for that barn for 24 feet. We needed 25. As shown on this plan, and I don't think we have the meets and bounds description yet, Scott, but we provide an easement across the pole portion of lot number 3 that goes in the back that would allow the owner of lot number 2 to come on that property and do whatever maintenance and.
So a maintenance easement?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's shown on here.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. If there are any other questions or comments, will you be prepared for a public hearing at the September 13th meeting?
We would.
May I have a motion to establish a public hearing for September 13th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will
Thank you.
See you next month. Thank you. Tucker Trails subdivision.
Trying to get it to view out so we have, oh wait.
Borrowed my wife's.
Okay. I do have one of these if it's harder to look at, hard to look at that.
Yeah.
We always appreciate the old-fashioned method, no problem.
So, if you recall, we were also before the board on this last month. There were a couple of things that were spoken about. One was, there was the issue regarding the classification of the wetlands in terms of, was it core? Possibly, because far off site, there's actually DEC wetlands. So, for clarification, we're showing a 100-foot buffer off those wetlands anyway, and we still meet our minimum lot width requirements based upon that calculation. But we petitioned DEC to take a look at it, provide a response. They went ahead and did that. We made our submission, and we provided a copy of that as part of our submission. And they also did deem that it's not state regulated. Again, that just means we don't have to put a DEC stamp, signature stamp on the plan, but we're still working outside the 100-foot buffer area, okay? Number two was there was a request to make sure that when we, to delineate or keep that buffer in the field to actually show something physical. I know with my office, we've done a post and rail fence, which has been, we replace it every once in a while, but it works rather well. So we provided a detail, and we show that on the buffer areas. We went ahead and provided for that fencing detail, and provide that on a 100-foot buffer. You had asked that on lot number 3, that the house be moved a little bit off the buffer, just to give it a little bit of room in case somebody wants to put in a pool and so forth. Again, the way it certainly presently works in the town of East Fishkill, that there's an integrated plot plan that's prepared, which actually shows the exact home that's being proposed, but we did pull that off of there just to show that the ability can happen, okay? Other things, again, such as we had an archaeological study done. I think at the last the last meeting, we did have a sign-off from Office of Park Recreation Historic Places. So we have a copy of that in the file. We did receive today a comment from them as well, specific to something else. The Redbird Inn on the corner does have some historical significance based upon its age and its look, so forth. So what was asked for, I did receive the letter. I had a discussion with them, and they provided an additional letter, which I assume got. What they're looking for is they're looking at the setting of the Redbird Inn, and they don't want that to be wiped out with every single tree going on each side of it. There's a certain feel when you make that turn and so forth. So what they asked for was basically a buffer strip, a 10-foot landscape buffer strip along the front to maintain those trees. If you recall, not so much on 52, although there is some there. On 216, there's some pretty heavy locust trees. I mean, they're ginormous. So she said, we want those to remain, okay, to be able to provide for some kind of, again, setting, to maintain the setting out there. And other than, obviously, the driveway permits and the entrances, okay, which she understood that we have to get in. I did tell her that we actually are pairing up these driveway entrances, and there would actually be less disturbance and tree removal because of that, and she was good with that. So we are fine with that, and we will detail that on the future plans.
Can you point out where the Redbird Farm is? Is it the farm that's?
It's right on the corner, Michelle.
Yeah.
The-
Big
Corner
note.
of where?
The
roughly
216 and 52, the big house,
Yeah.
right on the
where?
corner.
Okay, so it's the parcel that your parcel surrounds?
Yes.
That's the one.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the one.
And it doesn't, she doesn't say in this letter the amount of landscaping buffer that they would require, but you're saying it was 10 feet, she said?
The existing trees and shrub screening the new construction from the road will be retained. This vegetative buffer should be at least 10 feet wide. Consists of a mix of natives, trees, and shrubs. I indicated we're going to leave what's there, because that makes the most sense. And will be maintained for at least 10 years. I don't know how you're going to do that. It'll be forever. The vegetation will be removed only in the areas where there are proposed driveways.
So that's what you wrote to her?
No,
That-
that's what we discussed, and that's what she was fine with.
Okay, I'm just saying,
asked
because it's not in here, so I didn't see that in here, so
That's
that's
right.
fine. I just wanted to find it.
It's right in that
understand.
August 9th letter. It states that specifically. You may be looking at the previous letter, but there's another letter that's,
Looking at one from August 9th.
well, there's two.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mike, did you need to move the location of any of the driveways to avoid those trees?
No, they were actually laid out to kind of avoid that anyway. So, you know, there actually is the trees, and there's like a nice stone wall there, so again, we kind of position those. The site distance, we had a little flexibility with, so it wasn't like we had to have it here and we got to take those trees down.
And I know there were some things with DOT there, right?
We have conceptual approval from the DOT relative to all the entrances. We provided details on here, and actually, we've already submitted for the permits.
Right.
Not that we have to do that till you build, but just to move it along.
Right.
So Mike, just to clarify, in the first letter, I believe it's, I don't know which one came first, but I'm assuming the one I was reading came first.
Right.
They asked you to provide them a landscape plan in the CRIS system, so you apparently had a conversation after that?
Correct.
Okay.
She indicated that she thought that the site was completely wooded, and in fact, the site actually has Christmas trees, small growth on it. So we looked at the aerial, and I indicated, you know, certainly that her concern was, again, the setting from the road and that look. So I said, that works, that's already vegetated.
Okay, and there was, I remember at the very beginning of the discussion on this property, that I think it was the property owners came in and they wanted some
Right.
landscaping as well.
Right.
So that would be in addition to the landscaping that you're providing for them?
I don't think that's correct. They indicated they wanted buffer areas to make sure that they had continued buffers around their property. So that consists of the Redbird Inn, which would have a 10-foot buffer, actually a 20-foot buffer around the perimeter. And then actually, the neighbor looking at 52 to the left, Mr. Swazi? Sosa, I'm sorry. I think we're also, there's a 25-foot area there you can't build anyway, but what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that that vegetation remains through an easement.
Okay,
So,
can you mark those areas on the site plan so that we understand exactly where they are and the, you know, say, you know, per SHPO, this is the 10-foot buffer, so it's actually on the site plan?
Yeah,
Or
it
the
would have to be,
subdivision plan?
yeah, understood.
Yeah, and you locate the trees as well.
Exactly. You know, any of the landscaping that you're going to be providing, and anything that's going to be asked for with regards to SHPO should be shown on the site, on the subdivision plat.
Again, I got the letter today, so.
And, no, I get it, I understand, I'm just,
You know.
I'm looking at it as well for the first time right now.
Okay. Questions or comments by board members?
The only question I have for you, because once we, assuming the next meeting, we consider a resolution of approval, is you guys need to consider what you would like to see as far as marking the wetland. And I think Mike was suggesting split rail fence was what you were proposing to do, but I have to make sure that that's okay with you as far as what you want to see to mark the boundary of the wetland.
So, does everybody understand what we're talking about? Basically demarcation so that residents don't intrude on the buffer area. Split rail fence is something that's kind of traditional, I think.
It is, I mean, sometimes we've used boulders in the past, and, I mean, the idea is really just to try to keep people from mowing and disturbing the area behind, you know, where the wetland is.
And would that be on all of the lots being created?
It's just the ones that are affected by the buffer, which is I forget which one it is. One, two, and three. The buffer comes along this area here. So those are the only ones that are impacted by the wetland and the buffer itself.
Okay.
Mike, is it currently delineated on there, the split rail fence, or it would be something you'd have to add?
I have a detail of that split rail fence on subsequent sheets, and then I actually show on the plan itself that this needs to be installed. I guess
Just
the
so
only,
that everybody understands. I mean, I understand, I'm sure most everybody here understands, but just for everybody to,
and presumptively, it's assumed that you're not going to want these as part of every building permit. I assume that if you're comfortable with that, then we can actually do that work ahead of time prior to the submittal, it just saves one step on a building permit, you know? So we can just get it done, and it's over, and that's it. It's just like the one over there on Hillside Lake Road. The fence is up, you know? That was concern.
Because I think you're going to put the shared portion of the driveway in as well, up front, right?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Or it's the first I forget what we talked about
Yeah,
exactly.
the whole bit.
Okay.
Hey, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Lot 4, doesn't Lot 4 also infringe on that wetland? Am I not seeing the drawing right? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everyone feel comfortable with the split rail fence on those 4 lots?
Yes.
Okay,
I have an additional comment once you're.
we can include that in the resolution. Great.
So we haven't taken this to public hearing?
No, yeah.
This had
Oh.
a public hearing already,
Yes.
but we haven't neg decked and done a resolution for it
Okay,
yet.
okay.
But the additional comment I had was, we had been talking with our traffic engineer and staff, and the rail trail is located behind this property, and with the new subdivisions going in, Summit Woods and Montage, there's gonna be a new traffic circle, there's gonna be some traffic improvements, likely sidewalks, and we think there should be a connection along the front edge of the property to the rear where the rail trail is, so that the folks that are buying these lots, and also just to be continuous with the other improvements that are happening along the road, can actually get to the rail trail from this location.
So you're
we've
talking about
asked-
like a stone footpath to it?
Well, I think what we've requested really is for, I guess it's an easement essentially, right? Along the frontage of the property, and then turning in to go along the edge to go back to where the rail trail is connected, so folks can get to the rail trail.
So what lot, is there one specific lot that would be affected by it, or more
Yeah,
than?
point it out.
It's
Michael,
lot
over.
Is this the,
I think it's the
the email I got out,
last lot
I got from, out of the blue the other day? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
So apparently, the ask is along lots here, and then I saw something coming at the end of this lot line going to the rear.
Correct.
So here's my concern with that. Number one, not being the fact that this project's been before this board at least 4 times and a public hearing, and this came out of nowhere, okay? Sometimes it feels like death by 1,000 cuts, all right? The access to this rail trail is one door down at the intersection of 216. So I'm not particularly sure beyond, that property. Have you asked the person next door? They're renovating the property right now. I assume they have a building permit. Have you asked them to continue that down to that location?
Well, right off the bat, that house is very close to the road, as you know. Very close to the road. So I don't know that there's physically room to put anything there.
I'm familiar with it. I think there is.
Yeah, I mean, it's very close to the road.
But would
So-
that easement be for access for the people that are buying the homes, or would the general
Well, it
public?
could be for anybody, but, we've had continued dialogue with Summit Woods and Montage, which is coming up later in this meeting, and, wanting to make sure we have pedestrian access across 52 through this new roundabout feature. And then obviously, as part of planning, okay, now where do those people go from there? So this project is before the board, 6-lot subdivision, and it makes sense to have this discussion, to see whether we can provide some continuous connection to the rail trail.
Again, I got an email.
Another project is putting in a significant traffic improvement, which benefits this project by slowing down traffic. It's going to,
Well,
improve this intersection.
there's 300 lots over there. This is a 6-lot split. So in terms of that, also, that they're asking for a buffer. That's what we just received today, to make sure we maintain those trees and those walls and those vegetation. So
We'll definitely have to look at how all that ties in together.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
mean,
Because
there's-
you're going to be revisiting it anyway based on that letter. So now we're going to potentially incorporate what this path might look like within that.
yeah, I think there's plenty of room within the edge of the right-of-way. But again, I don't know why that couldn't be extended further all down to where everybody gets on it, rather than have people, because the idea apparently is to have people come down through here, and then there would be a point of access at this point.
Yeah, they'd be cutting through between the 2 houses.
We will evaluate that.
Right,
We will evaluate that.
right, when you have an access, which is one door down.
Right.
Well, and it might be a little dicey for somebody that owns the property to just have public access through there, I would think, right? I mean,
Or we're thinking of a right-of-way, actually a deeded right-of-way.
oh, it is, okay.
Right, and now, are we talking an easement, or are we talking a right-of-way? Because that's different.
Our preference would be a right-of-way, but I think we could be flexible.
All right, so now what happens is, we'll talk about, this lot, these lots have been actually laid out in accordance with, the zoning, right? 125 minimum widths all the way down. So now we're putting a right-of-way down there, so that what that does, that shifts now everything, okay? How many ever feet you want, and it disrupts the whole subdivision, because now soil tests are in different spots too. So this is the point that I make, that we've been here for a year, and now I'm getting hit with this. I'll have the discussion with you, Scott, but I think it's unfair. You know, I think it's unfair to have that discussion at this time.
Well, again, you have to appreciate, we have a project ongoing across the street, a significant
I
project.
know, that's been here for 20 years.
No, we're
Yeah.
just getting through process with DOT. This is a very fluid project with developments along the way. and
So because I'm in
it just
front of you,
so
because we're in
happens-
front of you, we should take the hit, right? You want something
Oh,
from
you
me,
don't-
I want
It's
something
not a
from
matter
you,
of
so you
taking
want
a
something
hit.
from me.
Listen, we're not going to argue with you. You're getting a 6-lot subdivision. Okay.
Getting, okay,
Yeah,
that's in
6 lot.
accordance with the code,
Okay,
right?
6-lot subdivision, okay. You're a benefactor of a roundabout that's going to be paid for by an adjoining project, okay?
I don't know where
And I
that
think as
benefits us.
proper planning, we need to look at it in its totality to make sure that we can provide safe passage for pedestrians to a well-traveled rail trail. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Now, maybe unfortunate that it's this late in the game, but you know what I say? Better late than never.
Yeah, well, my question is, what happens the next meeting? What's the next thing? Because that seems the way it's been going on this job the last couple of times. And you can understand my frustration, that's the way it is. It's not right.
Well, we also did just receive letters on something that we had requested months ago as well. So I think that the information is going both ways slowly.
Well, the wetland was a new thing. So again, I'm not here to sit there and go back and forth. What I'm saying is we're doing what we're asking to do, and we would appreciate to be able to move forward on this without continuing to redo things, right? And new things popping up. I think that's a fair request.
But does the whole board understand the definition of what Scott's saying? I think we should clarify it here so that everybody here can understand to make a very logical decision.
Right. So
Because I'm understanding both sides of this, but I want to really get a definite positioning of what we're talking about and if it will affect, because I am in agreement to some degree with Michael that if this is going to change the whole layout and scope of what's already been done here, or is it something that we're going to ask for them to do to just accommodate this foot traffic?
I don't know that it would have to necessarily affect everything. We'd have to look at that.
Okay.
And potentially, there's ways that we could have, the planning board could use their discretion to come up with a better site layout to ultimately protect the pedestrian access to the rail trail, which is probably going to be a huge thing once there's 300 additional homes right in this
Absolutely.
location. And I would just like to make a comment that the roundabout is a relatively new thing. The DOT, originally, there was an intersection. This has been a constantly evolving thing with the road improvements, and, we're being requested by DOT to look at pedestrian access to the rail trail as part of these subdivisions. So it's not as if this is something that we've been thinking about for 20 years and we're just springing it on him, okay?
Yeah,
So there's like a lot of new development happening in Stormville, and we really need to think of it comprehensively, and we need to look at all these projects cumulatively, because all of these projects will have traffic impacts on the roads.
So Michelle, have we, well, traffic, this is a 6-lot subdivision versus a very different set of traffic patterns coming from the other 2 subdivisions. But my question is different. My question is about the actual access you're asking for on the rail trail. Does it all have to be on this property, or can it be split with the adjoining property and do the right-of-way between the 2 so that you're not moving as much?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, again, they're still working on it, but they're,
I know, but I'm asking the
they're-
question, Mike.
right.
Because then it's less disruption to what you're laying out here, right? You're not putting the entire right-of-way on one property.
I don't think there's necessarily an issue along the road, because that really
I'm
doesn't.
not talking about the road.
And that's
I'm talking-
great. My point is, I don't think that's an issue. It just becomes right. It's largely the point where you got to cut through the lot to get to the back.
I'm talking about that.
Right.
Because they're asking to put it right at the edge of your property boundary. And I'm saying there's another property right next door. Can it be shifted to sit across the 2 properties so that yours is less impacted? The neighbor would also be giving up something. I'm just asking if that's something that.
That has yet to be
looked at. What's that?
Do you,
That has yet to be explored with the
do you
neighbor.
know that
They
intersection?
don't have
Lauren?
any actions before any of our boards, just the building permit.
Because literally,
Renovation,
access
alteration.
to the trail is 20 feet beyond where they're talking about putting this right
Can
away.
we put an overhead up or something so we can?
That's what I'm,
Is the reason that it can't be further this way because of both the roundabout and the wetlands? It would have to cross the wetlands in order to access the rail trail?
Well, the one driveway has a flag lot, the driveway cuts across, so if you put it in the middle of the subdivision, so to speak, you got a driveway that would cross it.
I was thinking the other side of the
The
inn
other side, you cannot really
That
get,
would be too far
because
to
of,
the west.
because of the wetlands.
yes.
No, and because of the geometry of the roundabout. It's
And-
just too far to the west on the other side.
And then,
So
What-
where is the center of the roundabout about going to be?
To the east of the existing intersection. We don't have that to put on the screen tonight, but we do have that downstairs.
Okay.
right.
Yes.
Right, and not to prolong this discussion any further, but in one of the discussions of the roundabout, they were talking about the woman who owned the Red Bird Inn there was going to have to reconfigure her driveway because that was going to wind up being in the middle of that. How does that interfere with what Michael has now agreed with saving these trees and the stone wall that runs in front of there?
Well, we're going to share this letter with our traffic consultant and Montage Summit Woods, and they'll evaluate that.
And I would just like to make another point. We have talked about the fact that there's multiple subdivisions now happening in Stormville with a common property owner. And we have talked about the effect of the death of 1,000 cuts and that there are multiple small subdivisions that would normally not have major seeker reviews, but when taken all together, might require more of a hard look as far as traffic's concerned. And this is exactly the reason why. And, we're coming up against it in a couple of different places now. And so I think that this is the classic example of why that might be necessary.
But let me ask you, if we were to, again, entertain this access, and he has to shift things, then does it change that buffer that has been discussed?
That'll have to be evaluated.
Yeah.
We just got this letter
Yeah.
when we arrived at the meeting tonight, because everything is just very fluid right now. So I think we have to look at everything in the context of the SHPO letter and then also the designing that's being done right now with the roundabout.
So clearly, there are a lot of challenges here, and I think the board and the professionals are sensitive to that. I think the very fact that Engineer Bryant has indicated that there are things to be considered and has asked for a sit-down, we would ask you to go ahead and do that. I think it's appropriate to provide for pedestrian access to connect to what's being provided at that traffic circle. So if there's some way that can be accomplished and
Yeah,
accomplished
and again,
fairly and
I think,
reasonably.
all things considered, along 216, I don't think that really changes things much, but the access up and through would be a concern.
Understood. Understood.
Can I ask you a question, John?
Michelle, so the Tucker property, which is right next door, that's what's referenced on this drawing, I mean, can't that easement or right-of-way be through there, through the Tucker property, up on that line, which is where Mike's lot, was it 6? Because what were we talking, a 10-foot path, 15-foot path?
Yeah, where exactly, I don't,
I'm not sure which one you're
I
talking
think
about.
it's that small house.
The small house that's being rebuilt is what I think he's
Yeah,
talking
so the small house that's being rebuilt is the question that's so close to the road, whether there's enough room to go from the edge of the road to the house to have that walkway. But there's a substantial amount of property between the renovated house and Lot 6 property line.
okay.
Couldn't that path be on that line, but on the Tucker side, or where?
On that house,
That's what I'm saying, like somewhere in the middle even.
yeah, except, again, all they have is a renovation alteration permit.
Okay.
Not before any board for any review, so.
So
that's-
it's-
That's just an ask.
Okay.
Which, it's a different.
Well, the ask
I don't
is,
disagree that they may have land, but not before the board. I mean.
Yeah, no.
renovation Alteration,
I'm just wondering if the ask may be what we do, because if we were to put the rail trail in front of the house, that's going to be a little bit more impactful to that house with having all that foot traffic
Oh,
going in front.
absolutely, right on the doorstep.
So, it might be one where we make the ask and say, we'd like to do this, and, the alternative is we're going to have the trail in front of your house, literally about 2 feet from your front step.
The thing you have to weigh out, if it takes them 6 months to consider that, where is that going to leave this project?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Yep.
Just as a
Totally.
quick point too, that house is close to 216, the one they're renovating. That house on lot number 6 has a 25-foot side yard, so it's going to be pretty close too.
But if if Tucker agrees to having it on that line,
Well,
it's not encroaching on your
Nothing
property.
to be done at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
If I
It
can,
would also be, Michelle, worth it just to understand if there's any large trees that would have to be removed to be able to create something like that. Like, it may need to meander a little bit to try to preserve landscaping, that sort of thing.
Christian, go ahead.
oh, sure, thank you. We had prepared a comment letter today. Most of the comments were administrative in nature, or looking for additional information. But one thing that I think is important to that Tucker property there is when I examined the proposed subdivision plat versus the construction drawings, it looks like there's a little bit of a disjuncture there. So I would recommend that the applicant, overlay that plat on top of the construction drawings, because some of the lines don't appear to be lining up very well, and it could potentially affect how much clear space is between, the side yard for lot number 6 and the Tucker property. So that's something, if
So it would really affect this. then.
it would, I just kind of brought it in.
I don't know if you're aware of that, Mike.
Yeah, we got the letter today, I think.
Yeah.
So, the subdivision plan gets done by the surveyor with the topo, and then we do the survey, the subdivision layout come here, and then we send it back to the surveyor for the plat, which is where I got the plat. So, yeah, I haven't taken a look at it, but.
Yeah, they don't match. I mean, on
Apparently
many,
something's
many
wiggled or
areas, they
something, so
don't match
we'll clean that
considerably.
up. by the
Yeah,
next
I
time,
mean,
so we
in
know.
some cases, depending upon what you hold for line, the rear property line that's adjacent to the rail trail, it's off by like 20 feet. So there's some, I think you just need to bring in, Bobby Oswald's
Yeah,
work
we'll check it out.
on yours, and that could affect, some of the grading for the lots.
Maybe it
I
affects
think
your septic.
overall that it can be done. You just need to make sure, and you have to know what you have and what you don't have, because the way it's laid out, one of the improvements for lot 6 actually appears to fall on the Tucker property, so we just need to be mindful of
The
that.
property's pretty flat, so it's pretty straightforward in terms of grading and stuff, but we'll get that hammered out.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Michael, appreciate your getting together with our professionals as soon as you can to try to work through some of the issues that we talked about,
Sure.
and we'll see you next month.
See you next month. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Next item on the agenda is Simtech. Is there anyone here for the applicant?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Steve Whalen, Whalen Architecture. We're the architects for the SimTech edition. I'm also joined tonight by Stephen Teed. He's the owner, and Brian Hildebrand of Hildebrand Engineering. He's a civil engineer. So from our last presentation, we're in receipt of all the comments from Christian Moore. I think that's dated June 21st. I think a bulk of those comments had to deal with some of the civil information that we needed. Mostly like the inverts, topography. We do now have that information, but nothing else has changed on the drawings.
Okay. Michelle, can you remind me, are we in the public hearing phase, or did we close that?
So we need to open the public hearing for this evening, and then, assuming there's no issues in the
Okay.
public hearing, we could vote to close it, and then potentially do a neg deck and a resolution. if
Got it.
the
Excellent. Thank you.
Board so chooses.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Is there any member of the public here to speak for or against the project, Simtech? If not, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If there's no further comments or questions, I will read through a negative declaration and resolution for the project. Negative declaration, Simtech addition, unlisted action, and The proposed action is a 6,400 square foot addition to an existing 89,948 square foot building. The proposed addition would be constructed within an existing parking area, and no undeveloped land would be disturbed. Therefore, the proposed addition would not be expected to result in any significant changes to the land uses or character of the surrounding neighborhood. Further, the proposed addition would not be expected to result in any significant adverse impacts on the environment for the following reasons. The action will not generate a significant amount of additional vehicles, noise, or emissions, will not result in any impacts to historic or archaeological resources, will not result in any impacts related to hazardous materials, will not result in a significant effect on air, water quality, or ambient noise levels for adjoining areas, will not result in an unacceptable risk of flooding or major geological hazards, will not have a substantial aesthetic effect, will not adversely affect any surface water or groundwater, will not allow for improper uses within specified zoning districts, will not result in adverse cumulative impacts, will not result in adverse growth inducement impacts, and is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. In conclusion, no significant potential impacts were identified as a result of the proposed action. May I have a motion to approve this negative declaration?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and a resolution for Simtech, name of applicant Stephen Teed, location 40 Corporate Park Drive. Whereas Simtech is an existing light manufacturing business located in the B1 zoning district, whereas the applicant is applying for an amended site plan approval to construct a 6,400 square foot addition to an existing building, whereas the addition would be constructed on an existing parking area to the rear of the site, whereas the 53 remaining parking spaces would meet the required parking demand for the use, whereas the proposed addition was reviewed and approved by the ARC, whereas the proposed project is an unlisted action under seeker and short form EAF was prepared, and whereas a public hearing for the proposed addition was opened and closed on August 9th, 2022, and whereas a negative declaration was adopted by the Planning Board on August 9th, 2022, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby approves the amended site plan for Simtech as represented on a map entitled New Addition for Simtech prepared by Whalen Architecture, PLLC, dated March 31st, 2022, and last revised May 3rd, 2021. And be it further resolved that within 5 business days of the adoption of this resolution, the chair or other duly authorized member of the planning board shall cause a copy of this resolution to be filed with the town clerk and a copy sent to the applicant owner. May I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Can I just ask one, I'm sorry, one quick question. Is May 3rd the last revision? There was nothing since May 3rd?
No, that's our last document.
Okay, all right, cool.
Okay. So I have a motion. Could I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Lori G.,
Aye.
Craig Arco,
Aye.
Ed Miyoshi,
Aye.
Sarah Bledsoe,
Aye.
Richard Campbell,
Aye.
Donald Pepe,
Aye.
John Eichman. I'm an aye. It passes. Thank you
Great,
very much.
thank you.
Next item on the agenda is McDonald's. Okay, cool. So I'll accept a motion to open the public hearing for McDonald's.
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll start, if there are any questions by board members or professionals. If you'd like to make a presentation on what's changed from the last time,
Yeah, sure.
that'd be great.
Good evening. For the applicant, Matthew Ingber from the law firm of Brown Altman DeLeo, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301, Melville, New York. So since the last public work session on June 21st, the applicant has responded to this board's comments as well as the town engineers. So the entrance lane to access the site was increased from 13.1 feet to now it's 18 feet. There's now a dedicated loading stall on the site. 2 employee-only stalls were added at the southwesterly corner of the site. And in addition, in response to comments from the fire marshal, a Knox box was added at the entrance of the restaurant. So with that, I ask if the board has any questions. Our project engineer, as well as our project traffic engineer, are both here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments? No?
So I think last time there was questions related to the mobile pickup or the mobile order pickup spaces and whether or not that's considered parking spaces and can be counted in the count, or if those are not considered part of the count.
So as far as, our zoning doesn't address that. So I think it's sort of something that, obviously, if the planning board wants to recommend the town board consider that as part of the parking count, we could ask them to do that in the future, but right now it's not addressed. So it becomes an issue of whether or not folks could use those parking spaces. Let's say nobody's there, would people park? And I would guarantee people would probably pull in and park there anyway. So, the issue is there is one spot that is being removed permanently, because there were 7 spaces that were removed to widen the drive-through lane, and they replaced it with 6 additional spaces. So there's 1 down, but they're still meeting technically their parking requirement. And I can't remember, is it 2 spaces that are set aside for the pickup, or is it?
Yeah, 2.
So there's 2 spaces set aside for pickup.
But just because they're set aside for pickup right now, doesn't mean they would always be set aside for
No,
pickup. They'd be a regular parking space.
Right, if there were no mobile order pickups, they'd be, standard parking spaces, so then they would park and go in the restaurant. Here, they're just parking for mobile orders, and they'll be in and out much faster because the food's getting brought to them.
I'm guessing that mobile ordering is here to stay, but that's just that's just a guess right now.
Wasn't there also a question
But then
about?
maybe every space is, is a mobile space in the future. I mean, we have employee of the month
but at the-
parking, we have other types of we've never been discretionary in that before.
Right, but if you pulled into McDonald's right now and you were going in to eat, you would not park in a mobile pickup space.
Okay.
You would likely choose to park elsewhere or continue driving around if there were no parking spaces. So my point is that it sounds like it's more of like a standing space. I know I wouldn't pull into a mobile because I'd be annoyed if I pulled in to pick up a mobile order and I couldn't because somebody was parked there. So in my mind, that becomes 2 fewer parking spaces available for anybody that wants to go in to eat or pick up or order or
It's
whatever.
a little similar to sort of what happens at a gas station. Yeah.
That's what I was
Happen
thinking.
when you pull in and somebody uses the pump to.
Yeah, it's a
Sure.
parking spot. But at the, as we're looking at this plan here on the right-hand corner, wasn't there some ability to add some parking? I think, wasn't there like the dumpster site back there, and then to the left of that?
They-
Yeah, the 2 stalls were,
They were relocated, sorry.
yeah, you could.
They were, Alex, I'm with Bowler Engineering. There were 2 parallel parking spaces where the loading zone is. We designated that as a loading zone and moved the 2 spaces designated for employees in the southeast corner near the trash enclosure.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're there now. We
Okay.
shifted them out from where the loading zone is shown now.
So from a parking standpoint, as the plan sits now and new, are they minus parking
They're
spaces?
minus 1 spot.
So they're missing 1 spot.
To what was existing. However, there was 25 existing parking spaces, but only 24 was required based on their square footage and the parking requirement. So now they have 24, so they still meet the parking requirement. It's just that they're down 1 from the existing condition.
So, but
There's
they need,
technically 22 spots that are non-mobile spots. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
okay.
And the 2 employee spaces are counted in that 24, 22.
Right.
But, and then, yeah, I
That's
guess.
common when we do that. I'm sorry.
No, and I apologize too. And there was always a question here too, at the height of employment, how many employees were in there? And I think there was it seemed like an imbalance of employee ratio to employee parking.
Yeah, I understand. Ethan, do you want to just go over the traffic, the maximum capacity of the site, even, and you could just discuss your traffic report.
Sure, I mean,
Yeah.
Ethan Chakosky, Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. We did perform a parking study at this location during at peak parking demand times for McDonald's. We looked at a weekday and a Saturday. We found, you know, in our parking study, a maximum of 16 parked cars at the site during a Saturday peak hour. So with the 24 proposed stalls, that gives you a reserve of 8 based on our
But again,
study.
I guess my question is specific to just the parking spaces you provide to employees and how many employees you have inside the restaurant. So you're saying that you delineate 2 parking spaces to employees. How many employees are inside the restaurant at any given time?
Do you have that number? 13 on that. A maximum shift would be 13. You know, not everyone drives, not everyone, you know, there's carpooling and other means to get to the restaurant.
Yeah. So does that overflow take place into then, you know, I don't know your affiliation with the actual plaza itself. Does that employee parking spill over into there then? Because obviously I would assume that the majority of people that work there drive there. I'm sure some of them may, you know, get dropped off, but how does that work then thereafter?
But my understanding is that all of the parking is contained on this site, and they don't need any overflow parking,
Okay.
which is typical of these types of McDonald's restaurants. I mean, typically, they don't, the parking demand, we've studied many of these locations, the parking demand is usually one per, 2 to 3 seats, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's one every 2 or 3 seats.
So, you know, we find, based on my experience studying these McDonald's in this area, that this is an inadequate parking supply for the employees and customers. And then also, when you consider the mobile order stalls, you know, if those weren't there, there would still be that demand for parking. I mean, when we do these parking studies, those mobile order stalls are included in our count. We don't exclude those, as well as any employee parking on site.
And is there like a ratio though of, let's say, drive-through customers as opposed to dine-in customers that actually physically walk in the space? Is there any kind of way to understand that?
The trends that they're seeing, and that doesn't work, we've been in a little bit of a pandemic world in the last few years, but the trends that they're seeing from a drive-through perspective have been increasing, so more people are using the drive-through. I think it's generally up around 70%, probably a little bit more than that, candidly. But, I mean, again, we've been in a little bit of a pandemic world, so the drive-through is more of a heavily utilized in that over the last few years.
And I've been by that McDonald's. It seems like the drive-through is very heavily traveled.
Right, which, I mean, that's really what the project is to accommodate, is that drive-through demand. And having the second order point really increases the efficiency of that drive-through. I mean, that's the sort of what we call the choke point in the ordering process, is the actual ordering. So you basically double the efficiency of the drive-through. So, I mean, that's their goal. And then, you know, at the same time, through collaboration with the town at these, with town engineer and then the prior hearings we've got, or town work sessions we've gone to, we're accommodating that parking requirement while
parking
still
requirement
increasing the efficiency.
was based on a previous traffic engineer did a study at fast food places and came up with a 1 to 100, one space for every 100 square feet in a building for a fast food restaurant. So that is inclusive of whatever employees would be in there. That sort of meant, that ratio is sort of meant to encapsulate that. Are there going to be times when a team shows up and there might be more people there? Probably. There's going to be times when there's
shows up, obviously, yeah.
difficulty in getting parking. But as far as meeting the parking requirement, that parking requirement was actually changed to be more conservative based on actual parking surveys done in the area of fast food restaurants. You know, now, as he was mentioning, things are a little different because the drive-through is a little different, and I don't know if they can say that particular location has picked up business because of rail trail or whatever, but certainly that was the standard at one point.
And does that square footage include the entire building or just the dining
So the entire building
area?
is 2321, I believe, and 2,321 square feet. So
24 spots.
So Michelle, the parking study you're referencing to Sarah's question, did it contemplate mobile spaces?
No,
or make
because it was
any
done a
distinctions?
long time. It was probably done, I think we might have changed that around like 2009 or 2010.
Oh,
We changed the
so it's a
parking
while
requirement.
ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, it also wouldn't contemplate the shift to drive-through that we've seen either, so, you know.
I also just worry about, 13 employees, I don't know how many drive, but this particular one is not on, as far as I know, any kind of bus route. And every other McDonald's or fast food place that I can think of is on Route 9 or kind of off of a bus route. So, I'm sure that, some people are, kids maybe getting dropped off, carpooling, whatever the case, but it just seems like 13 employees max with only 24 total parking spaces just doesn't seem to, the math just doesn't seem to add up. But it meets the requirements, so, I know, Michelle, maybe you had mentioned something about land banking parking, so, maybe in a year from now, they review it, and if they need to add parking, they have the ability to do that.
Does the site allow it?
Yeah, there is space, I believe, on the site. But, what we could do, we've done this before, is we could ask that if we have observed any issues out there, we could put in the resolution, we could put some sort of condition that we ask them to do a review of the parking in 6 months or whatever it is, once the additional drive-through is constructed and operating. And that if we see any issues out there, we could ask them to come back in front of the board. We could put a condition of that
And
sort.
does that happen through like code compliance, or how does that work?
Well, if it's in the resolution, then it would be, I guess, a site plan condition that ultimately we could call them back in front of us if we saw an issue. And yes, it would be done. The code compliance would have to actually
That's what I mean, so they would like
observe the
issue
issue.
a
Yeah.
situation.
But we usually would hear about something, like, right, we get calls or, so if in the future something were
Right.
to happen, someone would probably call us, we'd send somebody out to look at it, and if there was an issue, we could ask them to look at that and bring it back before us.
I just don't want to be banking or kind of assuming that there's overflow parking across the street when that plaza could be built out. I think there's a lot of vacant spaces in there now. It could be built out, and then there really is no additional parking for overflow at all in the future.
And just respectfully, this application is not, we're not here for a parking variance, so I just respectfully submit that conditioning this on any sort of parking demand is just not, I don't feel it's reasonably related to the request we're here for. We meet parking.
I think if we observed something, then it would be reasonably related.
I mean, if there were violations, then sure, but if,
Right,
and
so
if-
that's
I'm
what
sure
we're saying,
other-
if
other-
there were violations.
like as you mentioned, other gas stations have this problem too. I mean, and
No, they don't have this problem, it's just that
Or
it's,
if the lanes are, if the vehicle queue at the gas station is extending onto the main road, then that could be an issue. But I don't know if that's, if their approvals are conditioned on queuing capacity of a gas station.
well, sometimes we do take into consideration the spots at the gas pumps, and sometimes we don't, depending on the use of the gas station.
And also, the average gas station maybe has 1-2 employees inside of it, not 13. So it's like there's disparity here, that's all. I'm just not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to understand how this is all going to play out, the bigger picture, where, like you said, you're providing 2 employee parking spaces for 13 employees. That's a pretty big spread. So,
Well, I
I'd be
think on
comfortable
the
with an
contrary,
ability to revisit.
they're providing 24 parking spaces where they had 25 before. I think the improvements to the drive-through
Yeah, they certainly-
outweigh concerns about losing one parking
I agree.
space. And where parking apparently worked through fairly well in a previous study that was done.
And you have the mobile pickup spaces now,
Correct.
so they're working fine,
Yes.
no issues.
No.
I'm comfortable with a look back or a, callback option.
So I guess it's up to the board how they want to proceed with the.
So what is the feeling by the board as to any kind of a look back to review parking at a future date?
I don't think it hurts to have that as an option.
Regardless, if there's any sort of violation, then they could receive a violation from the building department, be forced to come back before the board, whether or not there's a condition in here or not.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
That would seem to be a reasonable solution to me. I'm not
I
sure that
agree.
we need to have a arbitrary sort of review per se. I think we should be looking for compliance with whatever regulations require. Any other thoughts on that by board members?
Before they had 25, right?
Yes,
Now we have 24.
correct.
Reasonable approach to wait for
And the
violations,
thrust of this was
cite
to
them, bring them back in.
pay the additional water station. So I don't, so we're arguing over one parking space?
I think there was
I don't get
concern
it.
that the existing parking was not meeting was
I mean,
not.
that really
But it
shouldn't be
does,
the issue.
they meet the requirements, so.
Yes. So I getting the sense in listening to board members from my left that relying on violations to be the trigger for any kind of a review would be appropriate, and that would be the case in any event, correct? So it's not required in the resolution.
Okay.
This is a public hearing, so I'll ask, are there any members of the public that are here to speak for or against the project? Hearing none, we'll move to, I do need to close, yeah, I need a motion.
Open it first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we opened.
I thought so too.
So, could I have a motion to open the public hearing for McDonald's?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we have to have the same conversation again, or are we? Your grandfather,
It's grandfathered.
Yeah.
You can backdate it.
Okay, and since there are no other comments or questions, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we do have, unless there's objection, I'll read through a negative declaration and resolution. Negative declaration for McDonald's drive-through improvements, unlisted action, Town of East Fishkill, County of Dutchess, 967 Route 376. The proposed action is an addition of a side-by-side drive-through and would not be expected to result in any significant changes to the land uses or character of the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed project would not be expected to result in any significant adverse impacts to the environment for the following reasons. It will not generate a significant amount of additional vehicles, noise, or emission levels, any impacts to historic or archaeological resources, any impacts related to hazardous materials. It will not result in significant effect on air, water quality, or ambient noise levels for adjoining areas. The proposed action will not result in an unacceptable risk of flooding or major geological hazards. The proposed action will not have a substantial aesthetic effect, will not adversely affect any surface water or groundwater, will not allow for improper uses within specified zoning districts, will not result in adverse cumulative impacts, will not result in adverse growth-inducing impacts, and is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. In conclusion, no significant potential impacts were identified as a result of the proposed action. Could I have a motion approving this negative declaration?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution, amended site plan approval, McDonald's drive-through improvements, McDonald's Corporation, 967 Route 376. Whereas the applicant is applying for an amended site plan approval to replace the existing single drive-through with a side-by-side drive-through, and whereas to construct the side-by-side drive-through, 7 parking spaces of the existing 25 spaces would need to be removed, and whereas the 2,321 square foot building would require 24 parking spaces per the East Fishkill zoning code requirements, and whereas the applicant proposes to construct 6 new parking spaces for a total of 24 spaces to replace the parking that would be removed for the side-by-side drive-through, and whereas the proposed project is an unlisted action under seeker and an EAF has been prepared, and whereas a public hearing for the proposed drive-through and parking improvements was open and closed on August 9th, 2022, whereas a negative declaration was adopted by the Planning Board on August 9th, 2022, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board hereby approves the amended site plan for McDonald's drive-through improvements as represented on a map entitled McDonald's Drive-Through Improvements Preliminary and Final Site Plans prepared by Bowler dated February 18th, 2022 and last revised June 29th, 2022. And be it further resolved that within 5 business days of the adoption of this resolution, the chair or other duly authorized member of the planning board shall cause a copy of this resolution to be filed with the town clerk and a copy sent to the applicant owner. Could I have a motion approving this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Board member Lori G.
Aye.
Craig Arco.
Aye.
Ed Miyoshi.
Aye.
Sarah Bledsoe.
Aye.
Richard Campbell.
Aye.
Donald Pepe.
Aye.
And John Eichman, I'm an aye. Passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, gentlemen. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing for iPark Building A. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good evening. We've opened the public hearing and ready for your presentation.
All right, we're ready. Hi all, I'm Troy Wojciechowski with Stantec. We're the engineers for the applicant iPark. The representative from iPark and from Ashley Furniture apologize. They were supposed to be here tonight, but they're not. I think summer vacations got in the way and the such, so I'll run you through it. I guess since this is a public hearing, I'll run through some of the basics for the public. This is a site plan for 253,800 square foot warehouse distribution facility. It's been known as Warehouse A, when I think now we can say the A stands for Ashley Furniture. It's not proposed to be a retail outlet. It's strictly warehouse and distribution. It's actually interesting, the face of Ashley Furniture for this project and this location is actually a local bred individual who I went to high school with, actually locally, years ago. So that was kind of interesting for me to run across somebody who I've been away from for many years, and now he's back building Ashley Furniture building, so it's pretty cool. So this is, for everyone who's new to this, the old IBM facility. This is Route 52 up in this area here, and you can see the proposed Ashley Furniture building is the tan building in the southwest corner. It's actually going to be constructed within an existing parking lot, so there's no removal of trees. It's a nice infill redevelopment project, which is really preferred by most as far as environmental concerns go. We're proposing, let's see, I have some of my facts and figures here. All of the utilities will be from the on-site system, so water and sewer connections will be from interior services that are already present. Stormwater will be managed, and actually the DEC regulations require the stormwater to be cleaned up, even for a redevelopment project, so we have measures that comply with the DEC's requirements for that. About 250 employees are anticipated, plus or minus. 65 loading docks, 76 truck spaces, and 11 container spaces. Trying to think anything else that would be interesting to the public. Let me just maybe blow this up a little bit. So access will be also something that's nice. It'll all be off of existing ramps off of 84 and the Lime Kiln Road interchange. So there'll be no traffic onto 52, that sort of thing. So that'll be another plus as far as traffic goes. I think it's a 24-hour operation with three shifts of employees. We're providing all the necessary parking for the Ashley Furniture as well as all the existing tenants in the vicinity. That's all I have for the public's review. I think the board has heard that all before, so here for any comments from the public, questions.
I do have one question. I know we've been speaking with you about showing the entire condominium for Lot 7 and all of the uses, as well as parking requirements and actual parking provided. Has that been provided?
Yes, we made a full technical submission, the full set of plans and SWIP at the end of June with anticipation of being on the July agenda. The project wasn't put on the July agenda. Since then, Michelle provided a review memo that kind of highlighted that information. So we submitted at the end of July for this meeting a one-sheeter that's going to be inserted into the set that shows the confines basically of Lot 7, which this is part of. And it also shows the parcel that is called Lot 10 that's going to be subdivided out for Ashley to own. And that plan was prepared by Labella, the site surveyor, back in end of April. We submitted that subdivision plat. As far as the parking goes, we have an overall parking plan that we've submitted, and we resubmitted for this meeting, and it's color-coded for all the tenants, and there's a table that shows each tenant and the required amount of parking, and it's color-coded so you can see where those general spaces are allocated to show that they're in the proximity of these tenants. And we also kind of repeated that same color scheme and parking analysis for the new one-sheeter for just the Lot 7/10. So we provided that information.
I just want to clarify, so this lot is now going to be subdivided off of the
Lot
lot
7.
8 or 7 or whatever it
Lot
is?
7, that's correct.
Okay, because that's a change from the previous application.
Right, we figured this would be an amendment to the site plan application that we had going, that we submitted this back at the end of April, this subdivision plat, the preliminary plat by Labella.
It was always shown as a condo unit and not as a subdivision.
Yeah, I think the subdivision makes it clear it's not a condo lot, it's an actual subdivision. That wasn't something that was contemplated when we first started the process, before Ashley Furniture was involved as a tenant. But then once Ashley Furniture became the proposed tenant, apparently that's their preference, is to own the parcel that they're located on. So then Labella prepared that preliminary plat that we submitted.
Could you also update your application to explain what you're proposing?
Oh, we can, sure. We certainly can.
But you haven't yet.
No, I mean, in our response to comments, we, identified that we submitted the subdivision plat, but we haven't gone through the actual applications to add that in.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're going to have to go before the zoning board to get the zoning changed, I would guess.
Why would the zoning?
I don't think the zoning board will have to review this as long as there are no variances required.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any variances required. So I don't think the zoning board will be involved at this point.
But it does change your application from development plan to a subdivision, right? So we're going to have to.
Yeah, I guess the subdivision that approval will be part of this site plan application now.
Does that change the process in any way, Michelle?
Yeah, it's usually a subdivision and a site plan.
Right.
But
They
I'm
can be
Be
reviewed
re-advertised,
concurrently.
right?
They're reviewed concurrently, right, but we have to receive the full subdivision application, which I guess we haven't received yet.
Right.
We'd have to re-advertise, right, for the public hearing, or no?
It could be a continuation of this public hearing, and we could just list it as a
We can
subdivision.
adjourn it and
They already closed the public
reopen it.
hearing.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
It's already been closed?
Yeah.
No, we haven't closed the public hearing.
So
We didn't close it.
Oh, it was just
still
open.
open.
We just opened
Oh,
it.
I thought we had already.
So it'll just be
neg-decked it.
adjourned for another
Oh, we
month.
neg-decked it. All right, we'll have to amend the neg deck.
Michelle, this being a subdivision or proposed subdivision down the road, are setbacks different?
No, there's a special, well, this site falls under a special permit that can allow for zero lot lines, specifically for the redevelopment of this area. So I actually, now that we have a subdivision, I have to actually think through this a little bit because there's some, they may have to get that special permit.
I think applause is in order, because we've been going down the path of a condo, and there's certain things we're trying to work through there. but
Right.
Subdivision adds another layer to it.
Yeah, I'm looking back at how this is happening.
While we're looking at.
For
that
example,
subdivision-
like parking might now require easements for parking, where otherwise it was just agreements for parking. So that's just
Right.
tip of the iceberg, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
And Troy, while they're, looking at that, where are you with the DEC and the wetland flagging?
The wetlands were flagged, but we're still waiting for them to be surveyed. So we don't have any, I don't believe that DEC officials have been out there yet to walk the line with the wetland biologist, but
Okay.
he did flag the wetlands.
Did you have any idea of the timeline of when that might take place?
I don't, I asked.
I know, I'm asking you to kind of project what DEC might do, and.
Yeah,
all I
I'm
can
just
do is
trying to
ask.
predict when the surveyor will get out there,
Okay.
get the line shot so we can get it on our plans. I don't really have an update for you.
Okay, so I think at the very least, we observed that the parking plan from the July submission needs to show the required parking and the proposed parking, because I think in places it doesn't show what's actually required vis-à-vis what is actually
Okay.
provided. So we need to make sure that we're able to match what was required for each of the site plans.
And locations are important in that
Right.
regard.
Michelle, did we also need site circulation for the, I'm assuming there's going to be loading docks and things like that?
Yeah, I think we provided some site circulation information, but again, now that it's a subdivision, we have to see how this is all going to, because there, if you recall, there are other businesses parked on this site.
Right.
Okay.
And now we're creating, there's an existing building. If this is subdivided off, there's an existing building that literally will not have parking, or a very small amount of parking, depending on where the subdivision line is.
Okay.
And there's the question of shared utilities.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the applicant has been indicating to me that I've been reporting to the board that there's basically blanket easements for utilities, access and things like that. But now with, I think you're right, with the separate ownership by Ashley of this parcel, I think those documents will have to be, revised accordingly.
But you'd still anticipate all the cross-access, cross-use easements?
Oh, sure.
and all that?
Yep, yep.
I know he had mentioned about just like a warehouse terminal, but isn't there a component where the public comes in for some limited purchase of furniture?
Yeah, it's more of a pickup, and it's on the south end of the building. There's two overhead doors there, and it's on the average of about 5 customers per day, so it's very limited. There's no showroom. It's just a simple pickup or maybe a drop-off of damaged furniture or something like that. But for the most part, people have it delivered.
And you had mentioned truck traffic only off of Lime Kiln and 84, so I don't know if we've seen a signage plan yet, but it would have to be properly signed to make sure that that's the case.
Yeah, the site plan that we submitted with our most recent submission indicates the new signs that are going to be located in the vicinity of the entrances here for both truck traffic and employee/customer traffic. And we've also noted that directional signs elsewhere on the property along South Drive are going to be updated to include Ashley Furniture as well, because basically the the directional signs start all the way out at Lime Kiln. And as you drive in, you see some that say, go ahead or go to the right. So those will be updated with a new slot for Ashley, but we do have some new signs proposed right here on our site.
So the monument sign has room for Ashley, do we know? The monument sign?
Yeah, there's a bunch of space.
Yeah, there's a lot of
There's a lot of space on those signs, yeah.
Since we have a moment, is there any member of the public that's here to speak for or against the project? And if you would, please come up and sign in and speak into the microphone.
Where do they get their gasoline or their diesel? Or is there?
If you could just sign.
Just go ahead and sign in
state your-
and speak to the microphone, please.
Tirza Malavenda. I'm just curious where the trucks, 70 of them, get their gasoline or their diesel. That's all. Did I say that?
Do you have an answer for that this evening?
I mean, I know they're picking up and delivering, but somewhere they have to get their, is there an on-site something?
There's nothing outside as far as refueling.
So are they going to go on 52 to get their gas?
It's going to be someplace that's accessible for the trailers, so I'll try to
Could you
find out.
get a little closer to the microphone without creating too little distance between the two of you?
Oh.
Okay, so we'll ask for that question to be
I'll try to
answered
find out for
as
that.
best you can at the next
Yep.
meeting. Any other questions or comments by the public? We have a gentleman coming here. Please sign in.
Hello, my name is Pat Flaherty. I'm the Site Operations Manager for Global Foundries. So on this map, we'd be responsible for lot number 5, which from what you see here is the cross-hatched area. And I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch your name, but I just wanted to correct that utilities are not available from the existing parcel. And so I wanted to go on record tonight to talk about that in detail. Obviously, a lot of things have got to get worked out between Global Foundries, the town, and applicant or iPark. But I just wanted to make sure before this goes too far that we get all that on record so that it all gets resolved. So right now, the only utilities that will be provided for that, and this was kind of the first tonight we heard it was a subdivision as well, will be sanitary waste treatment. Everything else, IT, telephone, electric, water, fire services, everything else will have to be provided by somebody else. It won't be available from Global Foundries,
So you're saying strictly sewer?
just sewer. So if I can elaborate a little more, just to give the board, and some of you were here when this happened, but just to kind of go back through some of the history. So back in 2016, the board approved an 8-lot subdivision for this area. That's when 2 parcels remained with, at the time, it would have been Global Foundries. And then the other 6 parcels went over to to iPark. The plan at that time was that either the county or the town would set up a water district to provide water for all of the parcels that didn't belong to Global Foundries. In talking with the town as recent as the last month, the preference is that the water district be established by the town and not the county. So the town, again, through this board in June of 2021, established a water district for this area called the Route 52 Commercial Water District. But that apparently was only approved as a default service for the site, not as an actual water provider. So that was placed in order that if we defaulted on the ability to provide water, that somebody would assume that entire water district. We've moved forward with establishing ourselves with a water corporation and becoming a public water supplier because we've got a commitment to supply water to iPark, but only iPark, and or a water district which either be run by the county or by the town. So from talking to the other town attorney, Tom had mentioned that there was a need, even though this default Route 52 commercial water district is established, that's not able to sell water to, in this case, Ashley Furniture, that it would require the setup of a sub-district, as I understand it. Potentially, this attorney or Tom could explain more on the difference between a sub-district and a district. So now what's happened in this year, as we're moving forward to get ourselves established as a public water supplier, we have to fall under the regulations of the New York State Public Service Commission in order to sell water, because we're not a public utility. So they've introduced us to a new form of regulation called incidental or lightened regulation. And that will actually prohibit us from selling water to anybody but IPark or a water district. So whether Ashley Furniture subdivides or is still part of this condominium association, which is what I understood it to be, we wouldn't be allowed by New York State Public Service Commission to sell water to anybody. So the solution for this, and don't take me wrong, we fully support putting a warehouse there. It fits perfectly with the use, and we'd love to see the property filled up with use. So we're not against the actual subdivision. We're not actually against putting something there. As long as it's industrial use, which this is, then that'll be fine. However, the solution to this, in order to provide water, is kind of a three-step process. First of all, we need the town either to set up a water district or allow us to work with the county to set up a water district. Secondly, the proposal would be, and I didn't bring soft copy, but I can do it with a hard copy. Proposal might be a little different for you guys to see. This is a blow-up map that he showed. And he's got, looks like he's got it set up this way. So his warehouse, sorry, I'm reading upside down, Route 52, Lime Kiln Road, Interstate, South Drive, West Drive, John Jay, and that warehouse will be located here. So the only way that we're going to be able to provide water for them, there's plenty of water on site. There's 500,000 gallons of water. There's no issue with the water. It's all about the distribution. The red line here is the existing supply to Lot 7. The pink line is the supply from the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority coming in to a tower, a 2 million gallon tower here. So the only way that we're going to be able to provide water to them, to Ashley that is, would be if we could sell water to a water district and have two options. One is to sell water at this location with a revenue meter and feed this red line under a water district. And then Ashley, as the gentleman said earlier, could potentially tie into that existing line, and then the water is provided, as long as the water district takes over the ownership of this red line. Another option, which Scott Bryant has proposed, is to pick up off of another water line that exists to the west campus and put in a new permanent system that would potentially feed Ashley. It could potentially feed this existing red, and ultimately it could feed Lot 8 if it's ever developed, and Lot 6 if it's ever developed. But again, we got the water, but we cannot sell it to them by state law. So I'll leave that there to refer to. The other potential solution, if the water district was set up, would then either build a temporary feed to pick up that red, as I said, with a revenue meter, or if there's enough time, which there may not be in order to meet their schedule, would be to set up a permanent water piping system, which would not only solve their problem, but also future problems. So again, we don't object to the subdivision, or we don't object to any changes or any building there. We just can't be available to provide the water. Waste, not a problem. The other subject would be fire water, fire protection water. Again, we cannot provide that. Actually, now that this is Lot 10, there's no requirement for us to provide that. So the fire water would either have to be provided through a tank system by Ashley themselves with enough size, similar to what was done on the West Campus. Preferably, it could be done by a water district if they had a solution. A third option would be to make an arrangement with somebody upstream to buy storage in a tank, which is similar to what's being done with Frito-Lay. But just to be clear, it cannot be us that provides the fire water. So what I was hoping to do tonight, to cut this a little bit shorter, I think I made all the points, and I don't know if this is appropriate for protocol, but what I'd like to submit, and maybe this is not even a meeting for that, I'll send a copy. I don't need to bring that many copies, I'm sorry. But I'd like to submit for your consideration, there's a couple here, if I can approach the board, 4 potential contingencies. If you move this forward, or when you move this forward, definitely before final approval, I'd like you to consider these 4 contingencies on any type of approval. First of all, that there be an approval to establish a town water district to provide water not only to this parcel or to this subdivision, but the entire rest of the campus. We need approval for the town of East Fishkill to assume the obligation to provide municipal water, potable water, and domestic water to this and any new buildings constructed on the iPark East Fishkill campus, which was the original intent back when we did the initial subdivision. And then, as I just stated, the fire service water would have to be provided either through a storage tank by the applicant, the town, other sources, but not us. And I think it always goes without saying that all of this would need final approval from the Department of Health before they were on board with sanitary, which is not an issue, fire services, which I know they worry about, but also then water.
Could I ask, so how, if at all, does this affect some of the other iPark projects, like Frito-Lay, which you mentioned?
Frito-Lay apparently has made agreements with, I think, town of Poughkeepsie to secure fire storage for fire protection.
Okay.
We cannot sell water to Frito-Lay. So the conversations again with Scott has been, if we go this direction and set up a water district, that would solve Frito-Lay's problems as well. But any future, it's going to be the same type of consideration. So our hope is that we could get a water district set up, or take the existing and convert it to use for this, which again, legally, I don't know the difference between the district that's currently set up and a sub-district. So that we'd have to talk further with Tom Wood about, can one be a subset of another? I don't think that's possible. But that all has to get worked out. We're more than welcome and definitely have been having working plans with not only the town, but Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, and also the Department of Health to try and figure something out so that it can be addressed not only for Ashley, but for everybody else that comes forward. It's very workable. Like I said, the water's there. It's just a matter of sorting out the pipes and who owns the pipes and actually who deals with the billing and who's allowed to actually sell water. So I just respectfully request that you consider those points. And if you can enter those into the records, we'll be available whenever to work with whoever, and then we can try and work down through some type of a solution that doesn't hold up their project.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So I know you said you can't legally sell under a lightened regulation, but if you were to form the Transportation Corporation, under Transportation Corporation, you can sell.
No, we did form the Transportation Corporation. Actually, it's called the Water Works Corporation. That is established. That went on record in September of last year. But it's through the course of going, the final step with that is to record that with the New York State Public Service Commission to determine rates and administration. As part of that, they said, no, we suggest you go this route of lightened regulation. If we went full regulation.
If you only supply to 2 entities.
Correct.
If you only supply to 2
Correct.
entities.
If you supply to more entities or you go the full-blown public service route,
right,
then yes.
Then you
could sell to other people.
Okay. I just want to be clear. It's not that it's impossible. It's just your preference is not to.
As lightened regulation, it's impossible. If you go full-blown regulation and set yourself up as a water company and sell water, yes, you're right.
Okay.
We're in the business of making semiconductors. We're not in the business of sending water bills to furniture warehouses or Frito-Lay warehouses. So we want to get back out of the water business, just like it's working very well on the sanitary waste now. That's an agreement between us and the town. We've got a waste treatment corporation set up. It's all legalized through New York State, and everything's good. We just want to do the same thing on the water side.
Right. Now, as far as I believe there's an agreement in place that you're obligated to supply waters to certain lots.
Correct.
I won't say specifically which lots. So, you know, I think there's something to be worked out there, because I believe you do have an obligation. And I know you're trying to work through that, but these applicants are coming in based on, I think, that agreement.
Just to lock that down, we have, if the town will set up a water district, we have agreement from IPARC in this case to get the water from the water district and not from.
Well, sure. Yeah, that's, goes without saying that they would agree to that. The town is not in a position of buying water from chip manufacturers either. Just like you don't want to sell water to furniture people.
You don't want to buy it from them.
Town doesn't buy water from chip manufacturers. So that's one of the, hurdles that we're trying to deal with. But I will say that the town does have, I think, a plan in place, subject to health department approval to move this project forward and other projects forward. But I'll leave it at that. But as it stands right now, there is an agreement in place for you to supply water. You have to work through some issues. IPARC has to work through some issues, and the town's here to try to help facilitate that.
Can I ask the board questions, or is that not allowed?
Certainly, go ahead.
Do these requirements seem reasonable, and can they be entered into the record as requirements?
We can certainly enter your request into the record. As to whether we think them reasonable or not, I think we're going to have to take the time to be advised by our professionals to really understand this a little bit better.
Okay.
I mean, this is, you're brushing us up against some fairly complex issues, so.
Sure. Well, I understand. I just, as a neighbor, we were kind of hoping for the last 5 years. Lori, you were the board member at the time. We made a lot of promises at the time. I think they've all been fulfilled from GlobalFoundries standpoint. And request at the time was to set up a water district. Now, we flipped a lot between county and town. We don't really care, but it has been 5 years, and now we've got a lot of development happening on that. So I'd really strongly encourage you to help us motivate the town to set up a water district, because I think it's the right thing to do, and it extremely supports economic development for that area.
I think part of this, not to interrupt, but, back then, had it been very detailed in these agreements in terms of what infrastructure needed to be built to facilitate your plan, it would make everyone's life a lot easier right now. But that was left out there, as a detail to be determined sometime in the future. So here we are in the future, and somebody's got to pay for all this infrastructure. Your applicant here, or IPARC, has an agreement that says you're going to provide water. You're saying, well, you need to connect to a certain spot. Meanwhile, it's not written anywhere in an agreement, and here we are trying to work through it all, so.
Right, just to build on the clarification, there is 2 million gallons, that's what this little red dot is here. So Ashley, IPARC, anybody can have 500,000 gallons at that red dot. So again, it's right back to what Scott's saying, is somebody's got to pay to build the pipe. And again, it's, all the water is available, that satisfies our contractual requirement to provide water. It doesn't resolve exactly what point Scott's making, and somebody's got to fix the distribution.
The lawyers muddled it all up. They should have said, water is available at point A. But they didn't say that. They said water's available.
With Frito-Lay, the horse kind of got out of the barn, and 5 years have passed. So I really think, as Scott might have said earlier today, we kicked the can down the road, and now we're at the end of the road. So that's really why we request some help with establishing a water district, or the town will allow permission for us to go do that with the county. Either way is fine.
But is that infamous little red dot there, their obligation met? Or is it?
I didn't draw the agreement, and I'm not going to weigh in on that agreement.
I'd have to review the agreement myself.
It's a private agreement, but I think both parties see it a little bit different.
Okay, so that's all I want.
That red dot's not mentioned in that agreement that I can see.
Obviously, okay.
To me,
very clear. It says that we provide water, no request, no argument, but it says that somebody, not us, will provide all costs to get the water to where it needs to be. That's extremely clear in the
Right. The question is, where does it need to be?
Yeah.
It would have been a lot cleaner if it said, you
Doesn't say that.
got to connect from the tank. That would have cleaned up everything.
But then referring back to Troy, if you could step back, I'm just curious, were you aware, or is the iPark team aware of all this?
They are aware of it, and actually.
Where's their, I don't want you to have to speak exactly on their behalf, but we'd like to understand, where do they stand with it? I mean, is this a disagreement at this point, or?
I don't have specific information
Okay.
on that. Alls I know is that iPark met with, I think, Scott and other town officials, maybe from Christian's office, as recent as last week on this issue. So it's not a surprise to iPark, at least as of last week. I don't know how long this has been brewing.
But it's a surprise to us, because we heard nothing of
No,
this.
this is, no pun intended, it's a very fluid thing, okay?
Does it go
Meetings are
beyond
go-
water?
Meetings are going on daily. No, we're only involved with the water right now. Beyond that, other services, we're not involved in.
And fire protection.
Water and fire protection.
Yeah.
Which, again, that agreement speaks to providing, GF would provide fire protection, so we're trying to, wrestle with that. But I can tell you that, not for Lot 10. Well, that application hasn't come in yet, so you may want to be mindful of that. Okay?
But if it's a subdivision, then don't we have to have conversations about the other utilities, or is it only water that we're concerned about?
I don't know if the Public
We're gonna
Service
have to check
Commission
in
is
all
going to
the-
weigh in on that, on electric. I mean, this whole thing is intermingled with electric, gas. Pat, you know what you got there.
Electric's clear, can't come from us. No request to come from us. Natural gas is a little bit muddier. We can't sell it, but we currently own the line they need. So yes, that one's going to be in the same situation, natural gas. The rest of
Same with the other
power,
utilities.
IT, communications, it's all on the street.
Yeah.
I would like to answer Richard's question a little more detail if I could.
Could you step up to the
just come,
microphone?
So iPark is very aware. Obviously, they've been working on this for 5 years, actually 8 years, if you count the time it took to do the deal. I was hoping not to speak tonight. If we could have reached an agreement with the town and iPark. I have agreement as of yesterday with iPark that says if the town is willing to set up a water district, they will let GlobalFoundries off the hook to provide water. I haven't been able to secure that same agreement from the town. Had the town said sometime today that they would set up a water district by the 2nd of December of this year, I had a signature from iPark that said they would let us off the hook from providing water. So again, my request is help from the town to set up a water district by the 2nd of December of this year. It matters to us because we're switching names. We're going to go from GlobalFoundries to ON Semiconductor in January. And frankly, I don't want to deal with this mess under a new parent next year. So if we can get it resolved this year, we back out of this whole thing. The town sells water to whoever shows up, and we don't ever get involved again. It just makes it really, really clean.
Do you also become a purchaser of water at that point, or do you try to own your own water and only sell what's left to the town?
Under discussion, I want the latter. The town has proposed the former.
Yeah, we've put on a table a proposal that we would be the sole provider, but at this point, GF's not agreed to it.
So they're unwilling to have us provide the water as a town?
I have a 30-year contract with Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority that runs through 2034. So I've got all the water I need right now.
So we would assume that contract. And then
That's
the
what
town
I'm
would-
saying,
the
there's
town would
got to
the
be
provider.
some way for that to be
We
passed.
can talk.
Yeah.
First, I need a commitment for somebody to set up a water district.
Well, it sounds like if it's
It's
not
the chicken or egg
done
right
that
now,
way-
so there we're at.
Yeah, but if it's not done that way now, then it still continues to muddy the waters around the site.
It could go either way. We could hand 2 million gallons a day to Scott, and he sells us back 1.5. Or we could go to the county, DCWWA, and say, I'll keep 1.5, and I'm handing 500,000 to Scott. Either way works. It's in the details of how do you work this thing out so that our interest is lowest cost, least complex in the future. If it's going to cost more for water to buy it from the town, obviously, we're not going to go there. If it's the same cost or lower, and we don't have to ever be involved in these discussions, then we could go with either direction. So we're more than willing to talk. We just need a commitment to do it by the 2nd of December.
But it sounds like if the town has to provide a service, there's going to be some type of, I don't want to use the word profit to be made, but there's going to be an expense to be
One would
had.
think.
Yeah, so,
And another component to this we haven't touched upon is the county sells water on a take-or-pay provision. So Pat's generously offered to give us $500,000, but there's a take-or-pay associated with
Right.
it that we have to get our arms around because we don't want to inherit that take-or-pay.
understood.
Yeah, so as Scott said, it's pretty deep. I just want to make sure tonight, again, I don't want to hold up theirs. I was hoping not to talk tonight, but I just need somebody to work with us in earnest, daily if it required, between now and December to resolve this. Hopefully that's in the same time frame that meets their needs as far as moving this forward.
Well, it's a pretty big component, and not having the IPARC people here is a little tough. I mean, I know, obviously, you know the complexity and the understanding of this project put before us, but this puts a whole nother layer, that has to really be discussed and
I think ultimately what will happen, I don't think the board needs to concern itself necessarily with all the details. I think the professionals are going to work through that. We have been
Right.
working on that. And ultimately, we're going to, tell the board that we have a plan in place and all the parties up at the counter are on board. And I think that's all the board will need to move forward. And we'll prepare a resolution that, maybe provides a little more detail. But I do think that the town, after discussions today with the health department, has a path forward.
Okay.
Excellent. We have
And I
every
agree with
confidence.
Scott. I think it's not easy. It's a complex thing. I think the solutions are there and could be worked out. And as I understand, it takes about 4 months to set up a water district. So I think it's very doable. We just got to get together and work out a path. The beauty when it's worked out is whatever the next one is, we'll have a clear solution and hopefully a distribution pipe.
Yeah, that's exactly, I would say, that's what I mean, to get through any future progress here too, that this doesn't become a factor.
Exactly.
Okay.
So thank you for your time. Appreciate your understanding, and I'm guessing we'll be back to talk to you in the future.
Okay, thank you,
Good
Mr.
night, sir.
Flaherty. Okay. Are there any other members of the public that are here to speak for or against the project? If not, I think we'll adjourn the public hearing and adjourn it to September meeting? Is that possible?
Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're working on this, so.
And then we can further decide anything from that point. So I'd accept a motion to adjourn the public hearing to our September 13th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
See you next month.
Okay,
Well, I'm just going to say, with that, do we expect another application for a subdivision, or what do we expect in the interim?
And what happens to
I have to
seeker?
look to see what,
Yeah, I'll coordinate
I
with
don't think
Michelle
any
on
of the, I don't think the application, the EAF, anything contemplates
What's the deadline for all
subdivision.
that? So
Yeah.
I don't know if September is going to work based on that.
I mean, and also, right now, you currently have a site plan that shows it as a condo. So
This-
it's, there's, things have to be,
I would say let's adjourn it to September, and if
we
it
did that
can't make it with whatever changes we have to make, we can always adjourn it. Okay, great, thank you.
okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Montage subdivision. And I believe we're reopening a public hearing
That is correct, yes.
from a prior date. So could I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Richard O'Rourke. I'm an attorney with Keenan Bean PC. We are serving as the attorneys on this application for Charbel. With me this evening is Mark Canoli, who's the Senior Vice President for Development for Charbel. We also have Peter Rosillo, who is here, traffic. He's a project manager, transportation with Colliers Engineering. And what I'd like to do is, obviously, this is a continuation. We recognize that there have been major, shall we say, submissions along the way since the public hearing was originally opened, including with New York State Department of Transportation and others. And what Mark would like to do is take you through what we've done before you open it up for a public hearing. And it might be very beneficial. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke. I'm Mark Canoli, Senior Vice President of Development with Charbel Dutchess Incorporated. As was mentioned, we were here last on October 12th, was it? And before that, we were here September 14th in a workshop format. Since that application, we were asked to do a few things, but at that hearing, we presented the application in great detail. We've had our engineers testify. We provided a large overview, if you will, of the project, the history of the SECRA. I won't go into that again. I think we're beyond that. We've taken the project from then through several meetings with staff. We were asked to coordinate staff with the DOT meetings and our ongoing application. So we had Mr. Fitzgerald, who's not here tonight, but his company involved in a meeting early in January of this year. We walked through a conceptual plan, if you recall, of the circle. We had meetings with the DEC and staff to talk about the permits that would need to be modified to take what we're now proposing as a centralized water and sewer system to serve the project. We know what we need to do to get there and get that permit updated. Those meetings were held earlier this year. We had several meetings with staff, Mr. Bryant, his assistant engineer as well, to talk about the specifics on site, our water and sewer utilities and how we would feed our project, as well as our off-site combined sewer system, which would be a force main system that would be designed with on-site pump stations that pump from our site up to 16, and I have an exhibit I'll get to in a second, to a regional pump station which would then pump all the way up through Phillips Road under the Fishkill Creek to the existing Four Corners wastewater treatment plant. We've engaged our engineers in that effort. The preliminary location of the lines are pretty much established. How we would tie our project into our adjacent neighbor, Summit Woods, has been talked about and is conceptual, but we're now getting into the details and the engineering. We're doing off-site analysis with geotech. We've done route survey. We know what's underground. We've talked with the Dutchess County Health Department as well in vertical separation with the pipes. We're getting an understanding of where those improvements will go and how to get up there. We're also working with the town on their part and their analysis of the existing Four Corners wastewater treatment plant, what needs to be done there, and what upgrades would have to occur in order for us to tie in. So I have the dates of all those meetings. I don't think it needs to be placed on the record specifically, but those occurred from December of last year through as late as last Wednesday. We had a recent meeting with staff to talk about both projects and where we are. We had a chance to review CPL's memo dated June 22nd, 2022, as well as HVEA's memo June 15th, 2022. That's your consulting engineering firm and traffic firm. Those comments were addressed verbally. Those items that were asked can be accommodated, and the final plans and the details will be updated as we proceed. Some of the changes that we made, let me just slide down one here. We were asked at the last hearing to talk conceptually at that time about our phasing. I wasn't prepared with an actual exhibit. It was a good question. You know, how do you connect the water system from our site to the adjacent neighbor and also connect to the town water system? What you see there is what looks like 4 phases, but we're calling phase 1 and 1A really the first phase. What's highlighted in red would be the main portion of phase 1, which would bring our main road into the site, get our excavation underway, start with our basins that need to go in early, our bridge crossings that need to go in. What's highlighted in what looks like light blue, 1A, are the 2 major improvements to, one, the traffic improvement at 216 and Route 52, and then the secondary access, the emergency access, if you will. That would be necessary if we were to proceed prior to Summit Woods. We would need to build what's shown in the secret documents as a 22 or 20-foot wide emergency road, which would then be expanded to, you know, their standard and what they're building. We would have to do that work in advance. Now, should the other option occur where they were to proceed, this plan also shows how they could connect through the red phase into the upper portion of that red phase, which is where the 2 wells are, and get water supply. And then this exhibit here shows how the 2 projects could be developed independently. The sewer system, off-site sanitary, force main and pump stations, and we're studying the ability to connect the water as well. Those could occur in 2 different routes. One would be from our project up through our main intersection around the circle or through the circle up 216 all the way up to Phillips. The adjacent neighbor, Summit Woods, would connect up 216 where they converge near the gas station. We're working on a location for that regional pump station. There are some options, and we're going through the analysis on what's best and what's most feasible and what, you know, meets the town's desire for a pump station in that part of your town. That's the update on the sewer. There's a little more to it. We have our engineer doing some modeling of the water, hydraulic modeling of the water needs in Four Corners and how we could tie the system together, whether it was a secondary source for backup emergency water or if it really just equalizes the system. And I think I got to leave that to the engineers. Those details are well underway, no pun intended. The well itself needs a little further study. There's some water quality analysis that back in 2006, when the wells were drilled, you know, they weren't around. But this GWEDI, you know, groundwater under direct influence, I believe that we have that sorted out, and I think we'll provide those details. And if we need additional testing, we're about to get started with that. There's some geotech testing that was asked by Mr. Fitzgerald to occur at the bridge locations. That's underway. What else are we doing? We had oh, I'm sorry. The formation, we talked about a formation of a montage, and I'll get to the other part, remind me. Forming a montage at East Fishkill Homeowners Association. Initially, we thought that the Homeowners Association on site would own the sidewalks, the lighting, the stormwater facilities. However, we met with staff and we understand there could be a better way, and I think we would opt for that as we continue to finalize the plan. Here, we could have a homeowners association own and maintain the on-site private open space, passive open space. The larger wetlands would be held by National American Land Trust through easements. They're really interested in holding these environmentally sensitive areas. In fact, they'll probably be happy to know that we're not building a regional wastewater treatment plant on site. And then we're talking about establishing a sidewalk district, lighting district, stormwater district. Those could then be additional taxes and fees on our residents' tax bills, which would fund the town taking through easements or dedication of roads, the improvements that would then be managed by the town the way that you've done that in other areas. We're still talking through those points. I'll leave that up to the attorneys to get to those details. What was the last? Right, okay. Part of our project, as we all know, is the connection of the water system. We've been asked by the town to connect our wells. We're talking about the donating of those wells to become a town additional water source. Again, that's something that we're offering here. But before all that occurs, we need to make sure that those high-producing wells, the quality of those wells, are feasible to do what we're being asked. And I think we're pretty close to that conclusion. We're just trying to make sure we understand the science and how that's going to occur. Our engineers are here, our traffic engineer is here. Our company president is not here tonight. You'll have to put up with me again. I don't know that you need me to go into greater detail about the plan, but we do have some upgrades that we talked about to the circle. Initially, we talked about a 4-legged traffic circle, not only to deal with our traffic at our main driveway, but also to calm traffic and make a safer intersection. In one of the review memos, you asked if we could connect sidewalk from our development up to the, what's that trail called up here?
Dutchess Rail Trail.
Dutchess Rail Trail, we have them everywhere, but we don't have them as nice and beautiful as yours. So what Mr. Rosillo did is he put together a plan that shows conceptually a sidewalk that would tie into our sidewalk on the west side of our main driveway. It would then exit the site, cross over, I guess that's the eastbound, westbound, Route 52 lane, over to the adjacent property. I think there was a subdivision talked about earlier that is near there. Then continue up over what would have to be a relocated driveway, because the current driveway comes right out at that point, if you will, which would then remove that conflict, and then we would run the sidewalk to the end of the project limits. And I think that would be on us. That would be our improvement. And as I mentioned earlier, that would be an early improvement, and we would commit to not building phases 2 and 3 until we got this improvement in. And if we were preceding our neighbor, Summit Woods, we would have to build that emergency access as well. So that would be our phasing. And that's shown in detail here. So that's why that's shown. And then we talked about our conceptual architecture last time. We're in the process of going through a little bit of a redesign. They're still the conventional, traditional homes, but we're starting to utilize much more maintenance-free materials. And it will take a little change in that. And if we need to show the board where we're going with that, we would come back and show you, those homes in greater detail. They still range in size from 26 or 2,400 to 3,000 plus or minus square feet. And as was mentioned at the last hearing, their price points somewhere in the mid sixes up here in town of East Fishkill. I don't have much more to offer. We're here to answer any questions, hear more from the public. I understand that we'll be coming back. And at that point, I'll let our attorney talk about what we hope to accomplish at our next visit.
So shall we hear from the public first? Okay, are there any members of the public that are here to speak for or against the project? You, sir, if you could just sign in and speak into the microphone, please.
Thank you. Good to see you all again. Rather be seeing you at Acme instead of here, but here we are. Coming here for many years about these projects. And I was always under the impression that the water was coming from Four Corners. Is that not the case anymore? or is it coming from wells on their property?
I think they indicated it's coming from wells in the property. What we'll do with regards to some of the questions that are going to be asked by the public, we'll collect those questions and ask the applicant to come up
Okay, well,
and answer all of them at one time.
One of the questions I'd like to know is, when did that change?
Well,
I mean, as far as I know, it was always coming from Four Corners.
I'd like to speak to that. At one point, we had discussions about drilling more wells at Four Corners to provide water to this project, so maybe that's what you're thinking back in your memory.
Okay.
But since that time, we've had some actually well issues at Four Corners.
Yes.
And we're under actually some restrictions right now at Four Corners. So
got
through
the
this
memo.
whole collaborative process, you know, there are wells at this location that,
And how's that-
based on 2006, that at that time had good water quality. They're updating those reports, but I think it's been kind of mutually agreed that Four Corners may derive a benefit from the wells at this project. We're still exploring, you know, all the details of their yields, and they would derive a benefit from Four Corners
So
Sanitary,
that's 16-year-old information.
which is being updated.
Okay. And how's that going to affect my well, which is on the next street over?
Well, during that, they do these 72-hour pump tests. The hydrogeologists verify it's all under the guidance of the DEC regulations, and they'll do monitoring wells. I don't know whether your well is one of those being monitored or not, but there is a provision in place to assure that local wells would not be impacted. And the DEC is the regulatory authority on that.
Okay. Is there a way to have requested that my well is one of the ones that get tested? I mean, you know,
Potentially, you
these
can,
guys have been coming in here forever.
You can always
They
make
don't
the
care about
request.
us, and now maybe I'm not going to have enough water?
no, you can make the request certainly, but we'd have to evaluate where is your well in proximity to the production wells. If they're nearby, certainly. We're always looking for points to monitor. If you're 3 miles away, I don't think it makes sense.
You're going to come right up against my property, basically.
Yeah, so if you would just send us some, you know, an email, some information where you're
Sure.
located, you'd like the next time there's any test done to be, you know, considered, we could certainly pass that along.
Great, okay. Well, that was my main concern, you know, water.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You, sir?
Because there are surrounding wetlands, I know that part of the plan includes water retention ponds on site and some on-site stormwater management. But I also wanted to ask, during construction, is there a SWIP in place, and will DEC be involved with managing stormwater pollution prevention? Because obviously, any cloudy water leaving that site is going to affect a lot of low-lying areas. It can spread very quickly because there's a lot of flat areas that are wet much of the season now, much of the year now. And any contamination of those properties could have impact.
Is that a question, Mark, that you'd want to respond to?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've submitted a SWIP.
If you hit the,
We do have to comply, and that's a very good point. It has a lot to do with how you design and build your project. A lot of our stormwater measures will go in early. There's a whole bunch of things we have to comply with. Mr. Bryant's, you know, going to be on site. We're going to have the town inspecting what we're doing there. We've submitted a SWIP back in May. I think our DEC permits also approved those as well, right?
They are.
Okay, but this is the local MS4, right?
Right, but still.
Okay. So all of that gets reviewed with our comprehensive DEC permit process.
And we're not there yet, but we would certainly have an environmental monitor on this project.
I was just going to say that's typical for us.
As a condition.
okay. The gentleman who wanted to come back up.
Is there a plan B? If this well, if our wells are affected to a negative standpoint, if there's not enough water coming out, what's the next stage? What's the plan? Are you just counting on this? And if this doesn't work, everything goes away? You must have another plan coming up.
Well, do you want us to address each comment?
So why don't we ask them, we'll ask them to come up and address the water issue after we're done with all the
Okay,
comments. So
thank
that's okay? Next person.
Hi, everybody. Jennifer Caulthers. I'm across the street from the two sites that are adjacent. I don't remember which one's closer. I do have concerns with the wells as well. That's a lot of houses going in and a lot of water being taken away from this area that hasn't been in a long time. We also have 20 acres of wetlands that are right across the street from these properties with bog turtles. So any of this project that goes on has a huge impact on our property, which is not very far from it and very interconnected with a lot of the water. And then my last comment is about, and I haven't heard it yet, but what we're doing with the schools, if we're adding close to 400 homes or whatever it is, Gay Head is packed. And that's the school for this area. So what are we doing for schools? So those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
I may have to do this in several sections, I don't know. My name is Yvonne Caligiuri. I live in the Redbird Farm, so I am very, for the last 20 years, been watching this project. I still don't understand why we're building on the biggest wetlands in Dutchess County if everybody's so concerned about wetlands. This is the biggest. That's a lot of houses in a very small area that's already congested. The sign's been up for 6 months. This is my first complaint. It was in water, whatever, it wasn't in a scripto. So as soon as the sign went up, you couldn't read it once it got wet. So I met them the other day. They were filling in the, with scripto. And they also put signs that we're used to seeing that you can read without all that writing that said the meeting is then. 2 days, signs are gone. They're not even there. So there's quite a few people here, but I think there would be more if people were actually aware of that. So that's my complaint, one. I don't understand that there's an astronomical cost for this project. I don't have to tell you guys, you know, for 20 years they've been pushing different projects. And the goal is money here, not for protecting our town and our people and our roads and our infrastructure. So that's a big problem for me. The water is a huge problem. It's going to affect my well too. I don't understand that. I've built a home in my lifetime, but the first thing you have to do is a perk test and make sure you got water and sewage, which this property has neither. So I don't understand how you can build and construct these big monuments to get water and sewage plants to get rid of the sewage. It's not buildable land. I have a hard time understanding why we're even doing this, or I don't get that. But I'm not the board. And as far as the water, there is a very well-known problem at Four Corners, and this project is going to save that project. That project seems like a failed project to begin with. So we're going to build another huge tower to save that project. And like this gentleman said, what if this plan fails? I'd like to hear that there is another plan as well, because we all live here. I don't know if this company lives here, but they just need to get their money back so they can run at this point. 20 years of this, got to be get my money and go. And now it's not only a Montage Homeowners Association, now East Fishkill's getting roped into this. This is getting crazy. And that building lot right there, 75 to 110, with a 2,000 square foot to 3,000. Everybody probably knows how big the Redbird Farm is. It's about 3,500. I'm on 4 acres. 75 by 110, put my house all next to each other. That's a lot of building on wetlands. I can't wrap my head on this. It's crazy. And then we're going to bring the water up to Fishkill. We're going to cross another creek, so it's another wetland structure. I'm having a hard time with this whole thing. 20 years has been going on. Major disruption to the ecosystem, major problem at the intersection, huge increase in traffic congestion, trucks coming down, and one traffic circle. I see over by Vassar, there's 2 or 3 traffic circles. That slows people down. One with trucks coming down and people going, you need at least 2. I don't know if you don't have the land or the money or what, but that's a major problem. And can we pull up that picture again with the traffic circle? Because there's no reference to what is going on. That doesn't show me where my house is, where your property thing is, or, I can't even, that's, to me, it's a traffic circle, yes. I got that.
Where this, you see that up there?
Yeah,
I met you the other day, you walked right across here.
yes, I did.
And you asked what we were doing.
Where were you standing when I,
We were standing right here where we put our sign. And your property is to the north, it's on the northwestern quadrant. Your house is back in the middle.
okay, so hold on. Come on back. You're going to, this is a walkway?
That's a sidewalk.
Can you do it? I don't want to mess up your picture. Show the people.
Well, answer the question.
This is the walkway. This is for people to walk from your development across the street and that way?
This is a conceptual plan for a sidewalk that would connect from our project.
Can you show them on that map so everybody can see
I
it?
don't have it on the map.
Just show
Oh, here.
so everybody can see it.
I don't know what the question is, so let me try to understand. the
Well, I'm
question.
trying to get a reference
Yeah, I don't,
where I am, where
let me
you
understand
are.
your question.
Okay,
What is your question?
I just tried to explain it.
All right, well, I didn't
I
understand.
want to show you where my house is,
Okay.
where,
So
you
let
know,
me explain
where-
this. Okay, I think I understand. If you can see the cursor, the red, you call it the Redbird Inn, correct?
Redbird Farm, yeah.
Farm, okay.
Yeah.
Can you see that on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where that,
Enlarge it, get it something higher.
I honestly, I don't know that I could do that, but I probably.
There and
Hang on a second, hang on a second. I think one person at a time could ask the question, and I can answer. So where the cursor is now, is that large enough? For the gentleman in the back, can you see it now? Yeah. Okay, that's the Redbird Farm Inn. Sidewalk connects, as I mentioned before, on the western side of the circle.
That's where
Now-
you are? On the bottom, this is where you are?
Yeah, well, you're asking me to show how someone would cross over, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You get to 52, where there's an ADA accessible ramp, our traffic engineer is here, that would cross over a crosswalk, which is, 10 feet wide? Yes. Typically? Okay. 8 feet wide. To the northern side of Route 52, and continue up that side, all the way up to the project limits, which I believe runs across the frontage of your property.
So I'll have a sidewalk across
You'll
my
have
property?
there would be a sidewalk in the right-of-way. This is all land in the right-of-way. Improvements in the right-of-way, out to the end. And I heard earlier tonight about connecting that sidewalk to the rail from, I assume, the same location, am I right?
In between
Yes, in,
some houses?
Yes.
Wait, where is her current driveway on this picture? Because there was reference to that was going to have to move.
It's like just to the,
Mr. Miyoshi,
Yes,
where my cursor is currently,
right,
there's a driveway there.
right.
Let's go here.
Okay.
Great, there's that
Okay.
driveway, and I believe you have a secondary driveway.
No, I didn't.
Okay, then it's just that one location.
Mm-hmm.
The plan would show a relocation of that driveway, and we would have to connect you to this location. You wouldn't pull out in this intersection anymore on that. That's the current corner right there. So that's that sharp corner.
So that island is in the middle and blocking the front of her driveway, so if she wants to make a left to go into Stormville, she's going to have to go out around the circle and come back around?
Now, if you want to make a left, you could go across. Yes. Go across and go, I'm not sure I understand it.
Well, to me, that looks like there's an island.
That's a striped island.
It's a
So you
striped
could go
island, okay.
across
So there's no
and make a
cement
left
around it
into
or
the
anything?
driveway. come out of the driveway and head north. Or as you just said, you could come out of the driveway, head south around the circle, no different than heading to the intersection and head east, I'm sorry, on 50.
However, I have to stop there while there's cars coming and trucks coming behind me.
Well, I'll let the traffic engineer
Okay,
explain the
okay, that's his
circulation,
job.
'cause I can get myself in trouble.
Okay, but you gave me a
There
reference.
there are signs in place that, require stopping, yielding, all that. But let's defer that. Do you understand at least where the
Yes,
stop? Okay.
yes, thank you.
So I'll let you go back. Do you want the overall plan or do you want that plan?
You could leave that there, thank you. How many cars do we expect from the Montage and the Summit separately? Do we know?
We'll ask the traffic engineer to
Okay.
respond to that.
And there is only one way out of both developments onto 216? Is that how that's designed? There's no secondary on the other side?
We'll ask Mark to speak to that again.
Okay.
There is a provision depending on who starts first.
And he'll tell us about the size of this and exactly where it's going to be, because that picture, the green one and blue one, it's not really big enough to show exactly what we're looking at.
The overall plan?
Yeah, yes. Can you zoom that in?
This shows an old configuration, but
Oh.
it shows you where.
Let's bring it up a little. You're doing good.
Oh, it's gotta be this one.
That's not the same, what we're talking
The
now?
design of the circle is different, okay, but that's the location. So let's
Location
go
is
back
there.
here. Hang on. Yeah, this is, I mean, if you want, you really need to focus. If this is what you're looking for.
Well,
show you the
no, I want
details.
a reference to
Okay,
where
go
it
back,
is.
go back.
Is that the right-of-way that's at that location now? The driveway
Yeah,
that's,
you can see, it's hard to see, I know, but if you follow my cursor on the screen, the existing 216 limits, partly, if you will, run right where this cursor is. Look up.
that's what's,
Yeah, it runs
okay,
here,
okay.
So the road would then move into the right-of-way, okay? And I'll let our engineer explain that better.
So it's coming
It's
this
coming
way.
further away from that first leg, okay? And then near where the driveway would be relocated, it would tie into the existing location of 216. So it would be a full realignment
Okay,
of that angle that's a dangerous corner, if you will. I turned there today. It would then now be, realigned.
and how do they propose to finish my
Well,
driveway?
that's why I had reached out a few times. I haven't heard from you yet. I've sent some notices and some emails, actually, and we wanted to talk to you about building a connection on your property
Okay,
and restoring the old location so that it was a safer access without making major impacts to current vegetation and coming up with a plan.
okay,
So
okay,
that's something I will commit to.
okay.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. Okay, as far as, well, I talked about the size of the house. I don't know if you know that there's a huge bat population at my house. And it feeds off of your wetlands. That's why they live where they live. Huge, and they've been there for hundreds of years, not since I've been there. They've been there, that you can't get rid of them. And they're protected, obviously. But what's the town gonna do when the people start complaining about the bats or the mosquitoes that they're living in? That's a
We-
big question to me.
We can ask Mark to speak
Because
to that.
I live with the bats, I don't live in the wetlands.
If you recall, and I remember, Ms.
I'll
G
sit
was
down.
chairman at the time, and we were going through series of SEIS, FEIS, all the letters of the alphabet, and we ended up doing it was a MISNet survey of the Indiana bat, which was requested. That study was done and is in the document. We were required to we can't clear from, in the winter. So during the breeding habitat time, you can only do tree clearing. Now, let's talk about what we're doing in terms of the overall development. Because we keep hearing we're building in the wetland. The plan that you see here was a cluster residential subdivision. The R1 zone allows lots much larger. Our preferred, well, what was determined to be the preferred option that we studied after years of going through the public hearings and dealing with the DEC and all the agencies that would approve this project, was that the cluster subdivision design would be the least impact on the environment. Not one of our lots, individual lots, future homeowner lots, fall within an adjacent area, the 150-foot wetland buffer, or within a wetland. We only have 3 crossings that were always shown on the plan, with the prior plan and this plan, that cross at existing farm road locations. Those are permits that are underway with the DEC and would be granted altogether with the water supply permit and all the others that come with it. So we're only developing 62 acres of 340 acres of the property.
Plus,
And
you
none
want to
of-
make mention of the property that you're going to, I guess it's going to be either through the donation process.
And the wetland, as we mentioned earlier, the wetland areas through a conservation easement are dedicated, if you will, to the North American Land Trust, who become stewards of the land.
And how many acres would that be
That's
approximately?
it's over 217 acres, I believe. I got that figure, that exact figure is in our finding statement. It's easy to get to. What I didn't mention earlier was, it was also requested, and it's helpful for the public, our website, www.montage@eastfishkill.com, has been up when my father was alive years ago, so that's got to be 15 years. We've been uploading documents to a server. We, at the last hearing, were requested to upload all the new details, the detailed subdivision, preliminary and final subdivision plan, all the traffic engineering plans. This new concept for the traffic circle is on there as well. So you can, if they need to see it better, you can print those out. It's all been updated. So I want to make sure that the public also knows that you can get to our information by going to the website.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments from members of the public? Yes, ma'am.
Has it really been 20 years?
No. 17 years.
Close enough. Some of my points have already been addressed. Yes, the wells, I was confused as well, sorry, about the wells. So now I'm more concerned than I was before I came in here about my well. How do I get my well tested because of this? What's the organization or the process, or?
Well, you can make a request to the town through email.
And just say because of Montage's
And
going
your
to.
location, you have to have a proximity that would.
She
you know,
does,
allow it.
she's
I
right
do.
there. yeah.
No, I understand, I'm just saying, she asked the question. I'm answering.
Okay. The sidewalk that's going to cross over, it's just going to have lines? I mean, like the rail trail one has blinking things. I mean, it's a little hairy there now. So what are you going to have besides just little lines on the road? I mean, I assume if it's 400 houses, huge houses, there's going to be people with, kids and bicycles. So that's not, a little walkway's not enough, I think, at least some warning.
Well-
You even have one here in town for the bus stop or something.
You could go to, have you been up to where the Dutchess Airport, Hudson Valley Airport is now? They've installed that new traffic circle there.
They have something.
There used to be like that crazy light system there. You could probably go up there and get a good
Yeah, I mean, I don't want it to be
understanding of a
too crazy
single-
because of light pollution, but yeah. I just was thinking about that when people are crossing over there, because I sometimes feel like I want my own private stoplight to get out of my driveway because of 52, and that's before all this. And a traffic circle, I guess, is that what it's for, to slow traffic down, or just to?
Yeah,
That's
and that
correct.
intersection is awful.
Oh, it's awful coming from Stormville, yeah. I mean,
Well,
when
in
I,
all directions.
And-
when I
and I
first moved here, which was 35 years ago or so, the first thing that happened was there was an accident there, and a helicopter came in. I was like, wow, there's helicopters here, but it was a horrible accident because of that intersection.
We will ask the traffic engineer to speak to the issues regarding the
Okay.
traffic circle and circulation and so forth.
I'm glad this picture's back. There's a stream. Let's see. It looks like it hits 52 on the top. Then your first phase one little group goes over it. That little stream causes all kinds of chaos along 52 for all the houses till the Taconic. And sometimes those people are flooded for a day or week. I just don't know how that's going to affect people, including myself, who have just a culvert. I don't know if it's called a culvert or a culvert drain. It's just a round pipe, big round pipe. And the water goes through there. Millions of gallons from all these years, and once in a while I have to do something about it. But in general, it works. And there's a guy that's built a beautiful rock bridge on 52 on the left. I don't know if anyone knows. The guy's out there. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. Is that going to be affected by these 500 or whatever houses? We'll talk about montages. Is there ever going to be more water? Some of us are worried that our wells will have less water. Is there ever going to be more water because of this?
Are you talking about stormwater or drinking water?
I'm talking the water that goes in the streams. I guess it goes, it's a stream, it's not either. I mean, when there's storms, it's stormwater, it's bad. In general, will daily life, or people watering their lawns, or I don't know what, the wells, do the wells like get let out like a dam? I don't know anything about public wells. I'm just wondering how that stream, it looks very little and pretty, but sometimes it's chaotic.
We will ask the applicant to respond to that question about stormwater. There will be a comprehensive stormwater plan, and
Okay.
it will be reviewed extensively by our professionals.
And along those lines, not just the water level, but things. I don't know what things are going to end up in those streams because of the construction. Because one board the wrong way is going to clog my culvert like nothing flat. And then what happens? My house floods. You know, it's a small little rural town gotten big, right? So now you're putting this huge development in there, and things are going to happen that none of us, I'm sorry, even the professionals, you can't always anticipate. So if I call the town when you start doing this and I say, look, there's all this stuff blocking my drain, I don't want you to say, oh, call X and Y Construction, they have excavators. Like, it's not me that caused this. How do we anticipate some of this? And that's, someone else brought it up. It's because of building site issues. How are you going to collect some of this?
There will be a monitor, an environmental monitor that's a part of our requirements on the project that will
Okay,
keep an
but-
eye on
But
what's
you
going on.
understand what I mean, that it's a stream that goes, I don't know where it ends up in Fishkill Creek or whatever, but there's normal people that know nothing about construction like me that just have a culvert. It's worked for 35 years, and other people as well. Like, I just don't know how to quite put it in the right perspective for you. The chaos it could cause, individually and, as a group. Okay, then, the wetland trust name is North American Land Trust, right? Is that? Yes. That's an official thing? Okay. Then I asked this last time, I'm going to ask it again, sorry, in case things have changed. The houses are individual houses. They don't touch each other. Right? Because some cluster houses, like, and the garbage is going to be in front of the house by regular garbage trucks that are privately, individual cans that people will have to pay $40 a month. Right, so there's not going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to be looking at now because of garbage. And then my tree privacy lines you mentioned last time. There'll be trees put, I border all of your phase one, so your first phase one, the first little strip, that's me right there. on the other side with my horse, looking at you. So I just want to make sure you leave more than one tree width. I think you promised me that.
It's going to be, yeah, the individual lots are pretty far from the edge of your lot, so that's forever green area.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the light green actually means. It's just probably drier there, right?
That's a meadow grass. Whatever's in that area now would remain natural. We would grade off those lots. Those are
Okay,
around 110 to 120 feet deep
okay.
from the road, and then the rest remains natural.
I'm just saying, because that's behind my house, there's no meadow there. It's trees.
Yeah, it's tree and grass is understory.
Okay, so I just want the trees to stay. I don't want meadow. I don't want to look.
There's no plan to clear cut from those
Thank you.
lots to the property line.
Okay, so I think, well test the sidewalk. Okay. Yeah, like, I just don't know what to say, like she says. I don't know what to say. I guess it could all work, but there's a lot of ifs. Please be careful.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments? Sir? And please sign in and speak to the microphone.
Just wanted to ask, 52, you're proposing a traffic circle. Are you planning on changing the speed limit on 52 from a 55 down to a 45 that enters that traffic circle? And then you have a crosswalk that goes through there. That's also a 45-mile-an-hour zone. You could expect people to cross the street in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, potentially getting hit, anything like that. Also, I mean, I'm not a fan of traffic circles. I was almost run over yesterday in one on my motorcycle. And, I mean, they're not really the best option in my eyes. My last question is, this area in white, I believe that's Robert Trempson's property? RTI? Yeah, yeah.
Tremblay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what happens when your last phase goes in and those people start complaining about the noise? What happens with his business? With everything that goes on during the day there? Are they gonna complain to the town, get them shut down? I live right across the street from there, so I know the noise that happens all day long from 1 in the morning till about 4 in the afternoon. So those are basically just my concerns, you know?
Okay, thank you. By the way, I would ask everybody to plan to only speak once this evening, just in the interest of time, but if you have another comment that you failed to give us.
I think I met you once there across the little pond. There's been quite a lot of nature change because of beaver. I just don't know if you're aware of it. It's changed a lot of the waterway, and I don't know what your plan is to do with such critters. DEC will take care of it.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments?
Got somebody coming up. Let's go. to-
Let me let this, okay, if he'd like to let you go first, fine.
Naturally, I'm opposed to a traffic circle at my house. But was it ever discussed to have, some kind of bridge going over this and onto this part of 52, which is not much? Well, there's something that, no, it's part of this development. Coming out the other side?
So I think we'll ask Mark to speak to that again for everybody.
I remember it was discussed a long time ago. It was
Yes.
boo-hooed and all that, but it just, 52 is just right there, and 216 is just such a crazy
Yeah.
spot for all this.
He touched on it earlier, but we'll ask him to
Yeah.
kind of walk through that again. The gentleman in the back?
I think everyone's brought up some really good comments. I'm just going to piggyback a little bit. I'd ask that the gentleman doing the traffic survey include the speed limits for a good 2 miles in either direction now that you're taking, I kept hearing today, traffic circle improvements. Traffic circles are never improvements. They're mitigations to problems that exist. You're taking a 45-mile-per-hour lane and taking it down to a stop. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but there's tractor trailers coming down that mountain all day. And now, we already hear I'm across the street, you already hear air brakes all day, and now I'm gonna hear more air brakes all day because you've decided to take it down to a stop and bring a tractor trailer through a traffic circle. So I'm curious to the quality of life assessment that that's gonna bring to the neighbors there as well. I'm also curious about now, after you go through the traffic circle and you go up towards Stormville Mountain Road, that becomes a racetrack because everyone just got through the traffic circle and wants to floor it and make it up the mountain in third gear. And that's gonna take you right past my home. I'm also probably the lowest lying piece of property with several acres of wetland, so I'm also concerned about the water quality. I've spoken to the DEC about the beaver on my property, and I've been told that's your requirement to maintain it. So I'm curious to know the land trust that you're giving the wetland to, what is their maintenance requirement, or who is the maintenance requirement of those wetlands? And how often will they survey the maintenance requirements of those wetlands? And that's it. Good luck with your project. I haven't been here long enough. Oh, I'd love to see the town. I don't know how often these public meetings happen, but firehouse is kind of small. Not too many fire hydrants. We've got a big police department, but I don't know at what stage there's 2 cars per house at 300 houses, so we could only assume 2 to 3 kids, schools, fire, police, hospital, distance per family, urgent care, requirements to those factors. How does that affect the quality of life of the current residents? I'd like to see that, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just going to make a real quick question pertaining to the transportation. Obviously, we all now know that Greenhaven become the induction site for the penal system. So now we're having prison buses, prison vans, all days, all times of the day and night that are coming through there. What is going to be the impact of Old Route 52, 216, 52, that whole general area between the post office and that dangerous triangle that we all love and have grown to get through safely? How are the speeds going to be affected? Obviously, with the rail trail opening, you have signs there that the state put in that tell bicyclists to stop, get off their bike, and walk their bike across. I don't know how many times people have come to a screeching halt for no reason, or people just zip through there and wonder why they're getting beeped at. So that whole area is going to have to really be looked at for the public safety. I know the gentleman mentioned about the fire department. Obviously, we all know it's volunteer, so who knows what the impact is going to be on that. And will there be hydrants around that will actually support fire suppression, not be put in for looks and then find out 5 years later that they can't support it? That, as has happened in various communities, that the hydrants are there, but you couldn't use them to put out a fire if you to save somebody's life. Just a thing, food for thought.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Can I go to the next page? Where
Yes.
Oh, please do, yes.
Okay. So I agree with all of the comments that have been made so far. The traffic circle is a major concern. The crosswalk is an extreme major concern. I'm in Devon Farms, so I'm on Stormville Mountain Road. I understand also the way Stormville Mountain Road becomes a speedway. All these things are true. I am very concerned because also 52 becomes a main thoroughfare when 84 is clogged up. So if 84 is stopped, everybody diverts to 52. And there will be lines on 52, even starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we put a traffic circle in, and you have these large trucks there. It's just setting up for disaster. The crosswalk is a huge concern. I have 2 young children that will make use of the rail trail in the future. It petrifies me that they will have the ability to cross 52 without any sort of signal or stopping. It is very concerning for me. As far as the land is concerned, building on the land, I've seen so many areas here that have been approved to build. They have started, meaning they have clear-cut the land, and they have stopped, and it has failed, and it sits. And that's upsetting because we have a beautiful area. I moved up here 15 years ago because this area is beautiful. This area is well-known, and this area is sought after. And the reason why is because of the way it is designed right now. If we start bringing in big developments, we're going to lose that aesthetics that we absolutely love here. When these 400 homes or whatever it is come in, they are going to be using pesticides, they are going to be using fertilizers, and these things are going to leach into the wetlands. No matter how hard we try, they still will. I grew up in a lake community. The lake community now is not able to use fertilizers because they have algal plumes so many times that people cannot swim there anymore. So despite our best efforts, we will not be able to prevent these things leaching into the water. The salt that they're going to use for the roads in the winter, that also is going to leach into the water system, and you cannot stop it, no matter how hard we try. So these are just things that are concerning to me. That is just going to change these areas that they were talking about, because these things will change the ecosystem. We're taking out the bats. We're going to go ahead and we're going to cut their land down, or we're going to cut their trees down in the middle of winter. They're going to have nowhere to go. And like they brought up before, the insects will increase, the need for these insecticides will increase, and we will see these things leaching into the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name's Tony Sozo, and if you saw the Tucker development, I'm the house to the left of the first of the clusters of homes. So I'm essentially across the street and just down a little from the entrance. Yeah, could you? Yeah, that's okay. So I do want to go on record and talk about the traffic problems again, and I am concerned about the wells, but that will be addressed. So I want you to imagine, I'm at my house, and I cannot open my windows now because of the traffic and the noise that comes down on 52. I just did not know we were going to have a crosswalk for people. So that is really concerning as well. So you have all these trucks coming down. You're going to say, oh, it's going to slow it down. Okay, what does an 18-wheeler have to do once it slows down? It has to start up again. What kind of noise is that? Gear after gear after gear after gear. So I get the trifecta. I have 6 homes coming next to me, 2 right next to me, and we'll have 400 homes. I'm figuring 600 cars easily. How is the quality of life? I'm going to address the board now. I respect all of you very much, and I watch you on TV, whether I'm here or not. And I remember, Lori, when you chaired it, so that's how far back I go. I'm just going to rhetorically ask the board, what do you think we're doing to this town? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen to this particular area with Stormville Airport gone, another 300 homes coming in, crosswalk, trucks, kids, cars, and what that woman just said, all the environmental changes as well. I just think you'll have to caucus, put your head on the pillow tonight, and just ask yourself. You've been here probably longer than me. I've been here since '86, but you may have families that go back further. Put your head on the pillow tonight and just ask yourself, what is happening to the town? Is this good? do we need that much taxpayer money? I think we're doing okay. It's $3.25 for every 1,000. We're doing okay. Ask yourself tonight, whenever you get home, what is happening to this town? And ask yourself if you're good with that. That's all I want to say. It's on you now. Thank you for the opportunity. And I would ask all the professionals as well.
Thank you. Are there any other people who wish to speak? If not, then, Mark, I might ask you how you'd like to proceed to maybe respond to some of the things that were brought up. Do you want to start with your traffic engineer, or do you?
Yeah, let's do this. We have several issues that I believe were issues that we've also talked about in detail during SECRA, which are being asked for more information on, some of which we can point to the studies, like the well study that was done in 2006, drilling into the bedrock wells, the 72-hour test. Our hydrologist isn't here tonight to provide that information, but that testing was done. So, those are things that you may want additional information on to supplement some of the questions, but our traffic engineer is here to talk through the details and how we got from a four-way intersection with a light to where we are today, a traffic circle with a sidewalk on one side. Our engineers are here to talk about the SWIP, the stormwater. We talk about multiple basins in this project that detain the stormwater and how we address that. So they can answer those questions. I've touched on some of the issues regarding the bats. Those studies were done. We're restricted from clearing trees during a certain period of time. We've done fiscal analysis of this project regarding the number of homes, the number of kids, the amount of taxes that would be paid. Some of those things have been answered and addressed. So I would defer to you where you feel like there's more information that you need. I'll provide it for you. Regarding the adjacent property owner who has a mining permit through I forget the year, but I've spoken with him before. We have a concern as well that, those homes have to be notified. We have to disclose that in our homeowner documents that you are near an active mining permit. But that's something we would have to disclose. I have some of the same concerns as some of the current residents. The beaver issue, we deal with those kind of things from time to time when they move back into our area. That's a DEC issue that's regulated. How we address it is regulated by the DEC. The North American Land Trust owns, I'll give you the figure at the next hearing and give you a little more background on who they are. But that group was brought up during the SECRA process. We provided the easements that they would hold to the DEC. The DEC asked that they review that document, and we pay a certain fee to them over time for their yearly maintenance of that land. They go out there, they do additional studies, they review the wetland conditions, they review our construction activity, they report back to the homeowners association if we're gone, and it's addressed. I'll let Mr. Rosillo from Colliers deal with the truck noise, the braking, the speed limit, the lighting, the signal for the crosswalk if it's necessary. I think most of those were the major issues. There are some issues that I'd like to address with our neighbor across the street on how we would like, as the applicant, owner, developer, to address the current situation with the driveway. We're committing to an agreement to meet with them on site, to meet with the engineer to come up with what we believe is a safer solution for that property to access the circle, but we're not making any decisions. That goes through a series of applications and correspondence with DOT. We're probably halfway into the process, but I'll let Mr. Rosillo tell you where we are with that. So I want to let some of the professionals answer. I think the traffic circle is a big one. Let's get that on record. And then if you feel like there's more details you want from all those documents, we can pull those as you need it.
Okay.
But it's all there. We've done those.
Thank you. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Pete Rosillo. I'm with Colliers. You'll see on the plans, it says Mazer, but we were merged with Colliers Engineering and Design about a year ago. The first things first was the number of vehicles that these two, Summit and Montage, would generate. During the morning peak hour, Montage will generate 23 entering vehicles and 68 exiting vehicles, and Summit Woods would generate 32 entering and 97 exiting vehicles. During the afternoon peak hour, Montage would generate 76 entering and 45 exiting, and Summit would generate 109 entering and 64 exiting vehicles. And they're distributed, the Montage traffic is pretty much distributed 2/3 to the west and 1/3 to the east, with a smaller percentage going towards the north on 216. As you know, this process has been quite long. We originally had a teed-up intersection, which became four-way. It would have required left turn lane being developed on Route 52, both east and westbound, if we used the signalized intersection. The state looked at that, and the alternate of a roundabout came up. They actually encourage roundabouts. One very obvious reason is they don't have to maintain the signal at that point if they have a roundabout. But the second is they find that it's a very, very good measure to ameliorate some of the speeding on these highways. And this, we've gone through a couple of reviews with the state. They've modified the design in a way where the approaches to the roundabout have a number of very slight reverse curves that are in them that really slow down all kinds of vehicles. They've increased some of the pavement width and added some striping to highlight the fact that there is a roundabout. There will be advanced signing and speed reduction signs on each of the 4 approaches to the roundabout. And the intent is a moving queue. In other words, you don't have vehicles stopping and starting up. What happens is they come into the intersection and they'll move in a yielding way on all 4 approaches. In terms of the crosswalk, we actually did a study to see, today really currently no one walks. You know, our video that we've taken over the course of the days showed no pedestrians. The state would, in that case, would probably say, you know, I don't see there being a demand, but now that we have the developments coming on, and I understand it's a desire to have it, we produced a plan that showed a crosswalk. It's likely that the state will want a crosswalk around all 4 approaches to a roundabout. That's their normal policy. We showed it on the west side because that's where the sidewalk for the development comes, and then it goes up to 216, up to the trailway. And it can fit. Sidewalks have to be within the public right-of-way. They cannot be on private property. What they do allow on private property are what they call stone dust paths, which are steel-lined, but they're not ADA compliant, so they want sidewalks if it's in the right-of-way. The crosswalk, wherever they are located, can be outfitted with what they call RRFBs, rapid flashing beacons, rectangular flashing beacons that are placed right at the crosswalk, that the pedestrian pushes the button, and there's a very, very bright flashing light in both directions indicating that someone is in the crosswalk, and drivers should be aware of that fact. The crosswalk itself has a refuge island in the middle. That has to be a minimum of 6 feet wide, so that if someone does cross and there's a vehicle coming on, there will be a place for them to be protected until that car passes. The other beauty of roundabouts, even if you do have crosswalks across all 4, the pedestrian only has to look in one direction and then cross to what they call splitter island and then look in the other direction. So it's safer than at a typical intersection where you always have to look both ways.
Can you comment on the roundabouts with the tractor trailers that come down the hill?
Well, the tractor trailers, I mean, everything is going to be advanced signing. There's going to be advanced signing for reduced speed as you're approaching the roundabout. So the tractor trailer will have to slow down to negotiate the roundabout.
What about any rumble stripping, like any
Well,
type
those are actually, they use those, they have them on the Palisades Interstate Parkway. I don't know that the neighbors would appreciate those.
Yeah,
Because they're audible, they can be very loud, intentionally, to warn drivers. So the state would unlikely put those in. They put them in sometimes in advance of construction zones to make you aware that there's something coming up. But I don't think that would be a permanent solution in this case. Again, you'd have plenty of advanced signing. The state may also require it to be lighted, the roundabout. And they have different levels of illumination that they require, certain types of fixtures, luminaires that they use in these cases. The town may choose to put something in the center of the roundabout, some kind of structure or a clock or some feature that represents, okay, you're entering a particular area. We've done that in Walk Hill. There's a couple other areas where we've done these where the town's made use of that area for their purposes. So we usually run electric to the center of the roundabout. So if they do come in and decide to put a holiday tree or some kind of a festival signing that it's there, it's available for them.
Is there any thoughts on turn lanes off of 52 into these development, further along?
What was the first part of that question?
Is there any thought to turn lanes coming off of 52 for the alternate entrances?
Not at this location. There won't be a need to have it.
Well, not where the circle is, but you've got other entrances
Well,
there.
at the Summit entrance, there are turn lanes. A plan for that. Those plans are in at the state. In fact, we just received comment on those yesterday, and those are being reviewed. I thought I should mention, our original first time around with the roundabout, we did have the access to the neighbor coming out to the roundabout, and the state said, no, we can't have that. So we had to push it farther north on 216. We are expecting comments from them, hopefully the last set, because what they're doing is they're sending this type of design goes up to the main office in Albany. It goes out of the region, goes to Albany. We get comments from both the main office and from the regional office in Poughkeepsie, incorporate those changes. We've made their latest round of changes, and we're now waiting to hear their final set of comments on that. I don't know if there's any other questions that I haven't answered.
Did we talk about speed limits?
Yeah, well, the speed limit, you could put in a request for it. The town board would have to put in a request for it. We would have to provide evidence as to the cause for it. It does change. It goes from 45 to 55 as you go from the west to the east. You may want to make it consistent through the whole section with both of these developments going in. There may be a desire to have that reduced. That has to go also to the state. And I think the last time we handled that, it actually went from the town through the county to the state. It's a particular way you have to apply for speed reduction. And that has to go through the Secretary of State ultimately to get approved. But they really would like to see, we could perform speed studies after the fact, and if it shows that the speeds aren't what we thought they would be, most times you'll find that 85 percentile speeds are higher than the posted speed. So the intent there is to get them down to at least the posted speed. And the roundabout will do that. There's no doubt that the roundabout will take care of the speeds in this section of road.
Is there any concern for entering the roundabout at 55 miles an hour from the 52?
There's the whole intent of having the advanced advisory speed signs is so that, and there are advanced roundabout signs as well.
Sure.
Everyone will know there's a roundabout coming up. There's no way that they won't know that.
That just currently, she's right, it's 55-mile-an-hour speed limit
Yeah,
right
and they
there,
can-
that's where it changes.
Right.
Also
they come down and-
very straight road that
Right.
comes straight down the mountain.
Yeah, as they approach the roundabout, the road, you go through a splitter island, and then the road actually weaves a little bit, has a little bit of a wave in it. So it forces them to slow down to go through the roundabout.
I would just like to add, in our discussions with DOT, I brought up that exact thing about reducing it, and they are not in favor of reducing it. And, it's their road, they're gonna issue the permit, but
I mean, that makes sense. It's
DOT
an
is not in
extremely straight
favor of
road. Why
reducing
would
that speed
they?
limit.
But
Did they issue a decision, like they said?
other than the signage and the fact that the
Yeah.
splitter islands are gonna do their job,
Right.
they are not
And
inclined to reduce
the
the
other,
speed limit.
maybe
Even with
there could be a,
knowledge of this amount of,
They know exactly what's coming, DOT,
Yeah.
but again, it's their road, so.
yeah, no, understood.
and that's a qualified highway, which means that semis, that's the road they're supposed to use. Now, if you can get it off that list, find another way for the trucks to go.
There's a business at the top of the mountain that loads the big trucks on a regular basis, multiple times a day, and there's gonna be a lot of tractor-trailer traffic through there every single day.
But DOT has no objections to entering the traffic circle at 55 miles an hour.
Well,
I know they're not gonna
I think
reduce
it's
the
a
speed limit,
misconception,
but
nobody's gonna be doing 55 and hit this circle.
No.
The intent is, and I
never
guess
make
their
it.
studies have shown
Right.
with proper signage, cars and trucks will naturally slow down as they approach it.
They'll
Same as
be-
they would an
Yeah,
intersection.
the intent and the design of it is set up so that they go to about 25 miles an hour, 20 to 25, to negotiate the roundabout. We originally, on our original set, we actually had it, what we call an eyebrow, coming from 216 to 52 West, where all that traffic wouldn't enter the roundabout, it would bypass the roundabout. State said, no, we want to slow them down, we want them to go through the roundabout.
I think a point that has been brought up with roundabouts, I know everyone has their own opinion, I'm not trying to sway anybody, but the accidents that occur at a roundabout versus an intersection.
Are way.
Just visualize a tractor trailer going 50, blowing a red light, T-boning a car, that's a
Right.
fatality. Versus in a circle, okay, it's a fender bender.
It's usually a little side swipe, fender bender type of accident. And the difference in, you're right, the fatality rates are way, way down. The severity of the accidents are way down with the roundabout.
Okay. Thank you. I think the stormwater SWIP plan, that's Mr. Day?
Good evening.
Good evening.
As far as the stormwater comments, we have prepared a SWIP. It's currently under review, as you may know. The stormwater system and I'm going to say for lack of, it's for both these projects were designed with both mitigation of stormwater up to a 100-year storm. But it was also, there was a request early on from the biologists to maintain hydrology because of the habitat on the site. So to answer the question, yes, they are mitigated and they are done in a way where we're using infiltration basins so that we will be recharging the groundwater, and we will also be ensuring the hydrology for the habitat on the site, both sites.
There was a comment by one of the members of the public earlier that there's currently, they experience flooding from time to time, and she's worried that that would be exacerbated by the project. I mean, was that something you were able to take into consideration?
The area I believe that was referred to is an existing floodplain, and you are going to have, as we all know, seen it, that you will have expansive floodplain in times when we're going to get heavier rain, especially after times where we have drought. You're going to see where, the water is not going to percolate as quickly depending on the intensity of the storm, and you will get expanse of that. This is no different, but this site will not generate it's going to generate volume, but it'll be released over a longer period of time. So all the infiltration stormwater basins were designed to attenuate the storm and to hold it on site and to let it out over a longer period of time so the impacts remain on the site.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mark Day? Sir, if you have a question, please come up to the microphone.
Sorry, you said you're going to hold the stormwater runoff in retention basin?
It's
And let that go into the land naturally?
That's the design, that's preferred design.
Isn't that gray water at that point?
No, it's stormwater.
It's runoff, but it's runoff from hardscape, which has fertilizers and salt and
Well,
all of those things.
which, it was farmed for over 100 years, the fertilizer is there now, so we're not, it's not, the design is to let it percolate into a biofilter in that system. That's preferred, and that's what the DEC asks us to do.
Once once it touches a hardscape of a construction material, it isn't considered gray water? And then runoff?
No, not a term I'm used, no.
Okay. All right.
Did you understand what I was asking?
Yes.
Yes.
As far as the wells, I wanted to touch on those. Those wells were tested back in, as Mark said, 2006. There was a number of studies done. The yield testing was done. We also, Leggett, Brashear, and Graham was the hydrological consultants. Now, they also put piezometers all through the site while we were doing the drawdown testing, and I believe it's in one of the numerous documents that there was no drawdown, no influence, no groundwater influence. So the GWIDI analysis, which I think was brought up earlier this week, was actually addressed by Leggett, Brashear, and Graham. The groundwater capability in the area, they had done a very extensive drought study, which is in that hydrological study, and there is a vast amount of storage because of the geology of the site soils. Also, we ran full Part 5, and we ran synthetic organics, we ran volatile organics, and honestly, in my 30 years of practicing, these are two of the cleanest wells we've ever tested. So,
Now, was that being updated?
Yes,
From the,
that will
so
be
you did
updated.
mention that, so I just wanted the public to understand that.
as we did that testing, some of the,
We've gotten requirements from town staff to make sure that what we've done complies with the current DEC standards.
Thank
Those
you.
tests were done, but I think there might be some supplemental.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
yeah, there were things tested in 2006 which weren't on the radar, which currently are, which we are going to be updating.
Okay. Certainly, yeah. Well, come back up to the microphone though, please, sir.
So the first follow-up question is, if we had these glowing reports back in 2006, why was it changed to go to Four Corners? That's the first question. And the second question, which I wish you would answer, please, because you didn't.
Say again?
I wish you would answer the question that I had asked. What is the plan if these wells that you're doing now are not viable? What do you do then? Those are my two questions.
Okay, yeah, why don't we let Mark answer that question? Thank you.
Sure.
There's two things being said. The one change, we haven't changed our proposal to use the wells on our site. Okay, we tested in other locations. These two locations, as was mentioned, were tested and provide, I believe it's 150 gallons per minute, and both wells in operation is over 200 gallons per minute of yield, all right, capacity. So these are two very high-quality bedrock wells. The quality of the water testing back then has changed slightly. We don't believe we're going to have any additional and if we do, it would be a treatment or a mitigation method at the on-site water treatment plant that we would put in place. So we didn't change our proposal. The only difference is we're being requested to tie our water supply into the town water system to become a centralized water system. So that was your first comment. I didn't think it was a question. We didn't change.
Well, the question is, at one point, it was supposed to be Four Corners. Why?
I believe that, though, I believe that came a little later in the process.
Okay,
When we had our discussions. and
But
trying
why?
to-
Why did it switch from where it is going to be now to Four Corners and now back again?
We never
Nobody's
said,
answered that.
Let me just put that on the record, because even during that discussion, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bryant. We never said that we would abandon the wells on Montage.
No, that was
We
never
always
gonna be
said we would
abandoned,
keep those either as secondary or a primary source and tie into a new well.
Does that answer the question?
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. You didn't answer the question.
But
And then the other question is if
To your
these,
second point though, sir, so
Yes.
the health department and the DEC are going to, it's going to be required as a condition before this plan is signed by the chair, that they've satisfied and demonstrated they have enough water. And in fact, the town passed an ordinance recently that, as we learned from Four Corners, it's not enough just to have one redundant well, you got to have two redundant wells. So, we've learned from that, irrigation plate, factors in, and we're having those discussions as well, what the limits might be on irrigation. So, to answer your question, if they can't demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that they have enough water, the project doesn't go forward. That's the answer.
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right.
If I may, just a couple little follow-ups, and perhaps we adjourn to our next session, which will probably be September 13th. But one of the things that was mentioned throughout was the concern in terms of what's going to happen in terms of erosion, stormwater management, construction, and the issues that are related to that. As was pointed out by, I think you, Mr. Chairman, there's an environmental monitor that is obviously involved and monitors, that's the purpose of it, the construction. Obviously, we also are regulated by the Department of Environmental Conservation and a lot of other organizations, all of which have the responsibility to make sure that we don't violate the law. There's no intention by this developer, they've built many, many hundreds of homes all over the place. There's no intention to violate the law and to make sure that this project is one that is successful. They don't invest in the money to make it unsuccessful. So I think the other point that was raised was in terms of pesticides and fertilizers, in addition to the environmental monitoring and the regulations that are in place, there's also going to be a homeowners association. As part of the homeowners association, there is a document, an offering plan that's approved by the New York State Attorney General's office, and what that involves are regulations that are internal to the homeowners association as well. I've been involved in many projects, and oftentimes, many of them in sensitive areas such as this will have a whole chapter addressing the use of pesticides and other products within that subdivision. And there are regulations that are enforced, and the people that spend the $600,000 or $700,000 on the homes, generally speaking, abide by those regulations. And so that's another layer of enforcement and regulation that should be brought to everyone's attention. Finally, as far as the comments regarding Greenhaven, I don't think anyone really knows what's happening with Greenhaven. My understanding is that there may be a closure. There was some mention about increased bus traffic. To be honest with you, I can't really respond to that. I don't know the answer to that. As far as the blasting of the neighbors, believe me, if there's anything that this developer wants is to get rid of any blasting or any noise that is going to impact his property values. I know that in many other jurisdictions you have regulations in terms of blasting, decibel levels, noise, and things of that nature. I'm sure you have one here as well. And if that's something that's violated, that's a town enforcement issue as well. So I would respectfully request that we adjourn to the next session. I know that's what our intention is. And finally, with respect to the signs, the signs have been put up, and most recently, how many signs did you put up?
Smaller size 3.
We put up additional signs. There were signs there earlier, they disappeared. We were told that it might have been DOT cutting the lawn. I don't know. We then put new signs up last week. We did not remove those signs. Somebody else removed them. So we can't have a monitor out there monitoring the signs. So respectfully, what we want to do is, if we announce tonight that this is adjourned to September 13th, it's on the record, the neighbors may come back, we will make sure that on our sign, it's going to say September 13th on that big sign. And I think that, to be honest with you, I don't know how many other signs we can put up. But it's September 13th. If that's the date, that's what we'd like to put on our sign, and hopefully that would do it. So,
We agreed, I think, with staff, and we would change the wording to just use the same language you have on your typical sign that the neighbors are used to seeing. But it will be on a two-sided V-shaped sign. It'll just say, the hearing, the date, not all the details and all the lots, and you just can't read that, and I understand that. So those two large signs, they're 4 by 6, two of those would now read your typical wording, right? The small signs I can put up every day, but they're going to disappear. So you can decide if they need to go up the day of the hearing. I'll do that before we get here. We'll come up early. But I think the large sign, two sides, with just the wording that you typically see on your standard sign that goes up to the public notice, should be more than sufficient. And those signs aren't going anywhere. They're mounted 4 feet in the air, 4 by 6 sheets, and we go.
That sounds acceptable to me. Is that something that we would ask for anything more than that?
Yeah, the only thing I just want to add is, in talking to Pete Sotero, couldn't be here tonight, there's still a lot of details to work through, with
Right.
utilities and elevations and with HVA, with curvature of the roads and things like that, geometry. And they were more of opinion maybe to just not establish a date at this point until, more of those details have been worked through. So that, I'm just sharing with the board their thoughts on that.
I'm just wondering, there are comments that remain to be addressed? Okay. And as far as those, any idea when we might be able to?
I mean, if you did have the meeting, you'd be in another situation having to adjourn it again, I'm sure, so.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
It's invariably by the deadline, which is the last day of the month.
So what we'd like to do, by the end of this month, those comments will be addressed. Okay, so if we do that, does that allow us to go to September
I'm going to leave it
13th?
up to the board, but we might be in a position of having to adjourn again next month if they're not addressed.
Okay, and I guess, if as long as they get it in on time and you have an opportunity to review it and it's complete, then we can proceed, and otherwise we'll adjourn a second time. So,
Okay.
so I think your proposal is that that we adjourn until the September 13th meeting?
Yes, I think perhaps that makes it clearer to everyone, and hopefully we can get our responses in, and Pete's office can take a look at it, and we can move it forward. That's what we'd like to do. And I'm hoping that we can do that and then close the public hearing. So,
Okay, so.
thank you.
Could I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing until our September 13th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Michelle, can I ask a question? When was the last time the school board was notified of this, the latest improvements to the plans and?
I'm trying to remember, I met with Darren maybe a couple years ago. Well, it was pre-COVID, but they're always on any of the distribution lists.
Okay, but they haven't
but
provided
the
comment
number of students or the number of houses hasn't changed. So they've been well aware of it for a long time. And in fact, there used to be a liaison that would meet with the school board regularly. And then I actually think, I can look back in my records, but I do think that even more recently, I did get an email from somebody at the school district, and I can check for you when that was.
Thank you.
And Mark, did you not have some study that was done that looked at the impact on schools, number of students, and all that kind of thing?
We did a fiscal impact analysis, we did a school children calculation. We met and spoke with Wappinger School District and had different figures. Back then, the accepted study was the Center for Urban Policy Research from Rutgers. Those numbers had a certain, school kid per house. We used those numbers, we ran it a more conservative estimate and provided those back then during the process. They've always known about the development. This last part, I didn't hear the whole discussion.
I think as far as the number of students that the development itself is going to generate, I don't think that's the question. The question is internal school district issue that the school where all of these children are going to be sent to is overcrowded currently. And so there would have to be an internal redistricting or some sort of thing that would have to happen. And the school is aware of that, the overcrowding issue and the number of kids
We're also
being generated.
project over time. We talk about this as a 5 to 6 year project from start to finish. It won't get started, until we're fully approved. We have off-site. So that's another year to a year and a half to tack on. You're talking about from now today to almost 7 years from now to complete full build out. Over that time, I think there would be internal discussions with the school district. I don't know how they work, but that's when they would have time to, absorbing all 122 lots with 0.8 kids per house all at once.
No, and I bring this up because since the last time this was before any board, the district has been redistricted as far as the elementary schools are concerned. There is only one elementary school that all of these subdivisions, and I'm looking at this from a comprehensive perspective because it's not just this, it's others, and even further into Stormville, there's more development, right? Which is great, but I want conversation with the school district about what their plan is to accommodate over the next 10 years or whatever the case.
Or would that be?
No, I think it's probably from our perspective, because again, it's a comprehensive look at Stormville and all of the development and demand on Stormville and how that's going to affect particularly the elementary schools, because again, since the last time this was brought up before any board, there has been redistricting of the elementary schools in our district.
If I may, and I don't know whether you're familiar with this, but there's a report that came out from Pattern for Progress, which is a 9-county in the lower Hudson Valley. They publish white papers, and it's a think tank. And I've been on the board for like 15 years. And there was a report that was published, I believe it's 2 years ago. It's called Out of Alignment. And I'll send it to whomever. I'll send it to Michelle. Maybe you've seen it. And what's remarkable about that, and what I find so surprising, is because when you take a look at that analysis, which was done, and I forget who funded that, but we've gotten funds from the Ford Foundation and other organizations. The aging population and the dramatic reduction in school enrollment that's anticipated for Dutchess County is unbelievable. I mean, it is unbelievable that the mean age is going to increase by about 15 years of the residents in Dutchess County. Correspondingly, the school district enrollments are dropping dramatically. So that's why this is sort of an aberration.
Yeah, so the problem is it's that overall the enrollment is reducing, but in this particular location,
Sure,
because
yeah.
Stormville is relatively remote compared to the rest of the town, there's one school that's in close proximity to all of these subdivisions, and so that school is getting all of the enrollment.
I can send you the link, and then if you can distribute and take a look at it. But it's very interesting information.
The school issue is a big issue because what it does, it just doesn't impact this area. It impacts other parts of the town where kids ended up, living a mile away from their elementary school, ended up getting bussed away 10 miles away to a different elementary school, losing their friends. It's a big issue. It's not just this area, it's the entire town.
Yeah.
So, when the public's here, we see a lot of people from this area, but other people should be here as well from the rest of the town because they have an input on this. And this is going to impact them if it oversaturates the Gay Head School District.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more public hearing. Summit Woods.
You want to adjourn this one?
I think.
We did.
Okay, all right.
You can drive.
So we adjourn this.
Thank you.
So, Summit Woods, could I have a motion to open the public hearing for Summit Woods?
Thank you.
And could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Good evening, Mark Day, Dane Stokoza. I'm with Amy Bombardieri this evening. We're here representing Summit Woods, obviously the adjacent project. I'm going to kind of ride on the coattails of what Mark has already presented because he's covered a lot of what's going to affect our project. The big differences are there's 2 points of access for our project on Route 52. We will be connecting the 2 projects. Montage and Summit Woods will be connected by both roadways and internal utilities. The project started out 20-some years ago where we did have on-site both water and sewer, both projects did. Over time, the DEC had asked that we regionalize, meaning combine the 2 subdivisions, which we did, and I believe the town had asked that we consider connecting to the system here in the hamlet, which later on developed into the Four Corners, which has kind of put us where we are here today. The project does include approximately 175 lots. The roadways are basically town road layouts. They've been, like I said, they've remained unchanged for pretty much the beginning of time. The same's true with the stormwater design. They were both subdivisions were designed with common design methods. Endless environmental studies were done for both projects for all kinds of endangered species. We've proposed crossings for both projects that we thought were less of an impact to both wildlife and anything else on the site, which the DEC has followed along with and I think endorsed to this point. We, as Scott had pointed out, we are also working in sharing utilities. We've got some revisions to make. The presentation that Mark made about the connection, as you know, it does include Summit Woods. One of the systems will go first. We don't know which. It's always been a question, but there's cross easements over both parcels that allow each developer to start ahead of or maybe in unison with each other, in the end getting the end product that was already discussed. So get that. If you got any questions?
How does this tie together with the Stormville Airport project? I know that there was something put before us a while ago, like with regards to the water and stuff. Doesn't, okay.
Mark, how many acres are going to be used for the 175 homes of the 325 acres total?
Approximately, I got to go back to the document, but it's I want to say about a third of the development is based on actual development. The balance will remain, let's say, either conservation easement or undeveloped.
It's about 100 acres, give or take.
Yeah.
It's gonna be 197 open space.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and 20 acres of impervious when it's all built out.
This is Amy, guys.
Okay. Any other questions before we ask the public if they have questions?
We do have maps, but we can't get it off there. So-
Okay. Is there a member of the public that has a question or comment for the Summit Woods project?
This public hearing is going to be adjourned as well, so if any member of the public thinks of questions later on, they don't have to speak tonight.
And I was going to, right, because we're not actually displaying the project
Right.
or giving the public a chance to see.
Okay, at this time, it appears no member of the public has a question or comment, although, again, you certainly may come back on September 13th when this will be reopened.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Gilchrist, project attorney. Mark and Amy did a very good job generally discussing the project. I just wanted to confirm a couple of things. As with the Montage project, this project has gone through seeker review. The board took an extensive amount of time and effort reviewing seeker. There was a a long history on the environmental impact review for both of these projects. The board did adopt findings, so there are finding statements for both projects on file, and a number of the comments you heard from Montage, and presumably comments that could be raised for Summit Woods as well, are addressed in the seeker record in the findings. Those can certainly be identified and responsive to the public comments. We would also request that the public hearing for Summit Woods be adjourned and continued on September 13th. A couple of points that I think, just for the record, and I know it's kind of late, but we'll move quickly. One is on the water supply, and there were a number of questions about impact to wells. Of course, the board and the town staff, as well as the project consultants, are aware this will be required to go through extensive regulatory review for compliance with public water supply requirements. All those standards will need to be met. If this is ultimately to be connected into a town water supply system, all the required coordination between the applicants and the town and town staff will need to be addressed. Even if this board were anticipating to move forward on the project itself, of course there would be a condition that any issue associated with not just the sewer but public water supply would be subject to any final engineering review comments and other regulatory requirements before the plat could be stamped. We just want to make that clear in the record. So any issue concerning groundwater impacts, not only have they already been addressed through on-site groundwater investigations, but they will need to comply with current regulatory requirements. And as to stormwater, there are clear concerns about that. But the state, as well as I'm sure the town stormwater program, requires that the project does not result in any increased off-site runoff from pre-construction conditions. If there's an existing flooding condition, that's an existing condition. What happens is these projects, Summit Woods, and if it moves forward, Montage, cannot increase the runoff to cause additional quantity of stormwater impacting it. That's why these designs generally are to retain the water on site, hold it, and release it in a controlled fashion so you're not increasing the quantity of stormwater runoff at any one time. That's for the protection of off-site properties. The state program is not just with quantity, but it's with quality. That's why the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan will address both issues, quantity and quality of off-site stormwater impacts. That's applicable not just for post-construction. There will be erosion and sediment control requirements during construction, not just the town being on site to monitor. The stormwater program requires the applicant to have an on-site review engineer to submit to the municipality. I gotta believe this town's an MS4 municipality. We will need to submit reports periodically in compliance with certainly the state and if there's town requirements. So the issue of surface water runoff, stormwater runoff, it's applicable both during construction activities and during post-construction requirements. So all of those need to be addressed by the applicants for both projects and will be addressed because state and local law requires that. So we appreciate that and again request that the public hearing be adjourned and continued on September 13th. Thank you.
Can you just confirm if you have a website similar to the Montage that the public can?
Yes, and I failed to mention Dan Garin of ABD Fishkill. So you do have the website with the plans that are updated.
In the last 8 months because there was nothing else.
Okay. And that's available from, do you know the web address to share tonight, or do we have that from the planning office?
I can get that to you tomorrow.
Okay.
It's Summit Woods in East Fishkill.
Okay,
The specific site will be submitted by Amy tomorrow.
Okay.
great.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions for the applicant, I'll accept a motion to adjourn this public hearing until our September 13th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So if there's no further business to be brought before this board, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
About 5 minutes.